across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And yes, good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Lots to get through. As you will be aware, you're across some of this, probably ahead of me. Nigel Farage pledging to deport hundreds of thousands of migrants under Reform UK's Operation Restoring Justice. Speaking at a press conference this morning, he estimated the cost of the 800,000 plus individuals expected to qualify for leave to remain in the next 3 years is a whopping £230 billion, describing it as an absolutely eye-watering sum of money. Well, it's certainly that. But the question is, can he solve the problem? Also this afternoon, Hamas declared victory on Sunday after Sir Keir Starmer was accused of handing a prize for terrorism by recognising a future Palestinian state. The PM said the UK would officially support the creation of a Palestinian state to revive the hope of peace in the Middle East. Doesn't seem to have gone down like a cup of cold sick at the moment. And also, it's been revealed that the South Yorkshire Police held intelligence on child abusers in Rotherham for 14 years before they were convicted, during which time the abuse continued. Long-time campaigner and former police officer Maggie Oliver joins us later in the programme. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. Leave a voice note on that same number as well, or you can message 87222. Don't forget to stick the word talk in front of it. Let me just ask you this. Reform's immigration pledge. Very straightforward question. Will it work? Will it work? 0344 499 1000. Will it work? It's a Monday, which means Nigel Farage makes big announcements. You can almost put that in your diary now. Set your clock by it. Sometimes it's the news of someone legging it from the Tories or maybe even Labour to join Reform. On other occasions, it's a new policy announcement or the finer details of an existing one. Today it was the latter. Reform UK have been talking about immigration and they're going where no other party have gone before. It's a big announcement. It's bold. It's confident. It's arguably what most people would want. But as with all tricky matters to do with running this country, none of that really matters. What counts is one thing. Will it work? Will it work? Nigel Farage is pledging to eject hundreds of thousands of legal migrants in an unprecedented reversal of Britain's relaxed border rules. He said he's unveiled plans to force all migrants with permanent residency to reapply for visas under stricter criteria, including a higher salary requirement, because it's down to just over 20,000 or something. At a better standard of English, the party would also change the law to prevent foreign nationals from accessing the British welfare system. The party claims this would save £234 billion over the lifetime of the average migrant. The party said the changes would lead to hundreds of thousands of people having to apply and ultimately losing their settled status in the UK on a staggered basis to prevent disruption to business. Now, you can see some cracks in the plan, rightly so. I mean, we are, after all, when a party makes an announcement, it's our job to scrutinise the announcement. When I say our job, I mean your job as well. All of us to go, OK, this sounds on paper like a massive amount of money that would be saved, requesting that foreign nationals don't have access to the welfare system. Again, on paper, sounds pretty reasonable. How long would you have to be here for? How long do you have to keep redoing your visa? Is this just about non-skilled workers? Will it apply to, Bob the neurosurgeon who came over from New Zealand years ago and has worked here for 38 years? Has he got to reapply every single time? Will it work? Very simple question. And give us your take on the overarching policy. 0344 499 1000. We've got Kevin Schofield with us, political editor of HuffPost UK. Afternoon, Kevin. Good
Hello
to see
there,
you.
Ian.
Let's start with Nigel Farage. Big old play. As I said, it's a Monday, isn't it? It's a sort of Farage
Every
Monday.
week, yeah.
Every week. Did it through recess as well, didn't he? There was quite a lot going on with Reform. They kind of kept it up. He's pledged to deport hundreds of thousands of migrants under a new scheme called Operation Restoring Justice. Farage argued mass deportations are necessary due to public anger over channel crossings and alleged migrant invasion. Here's what Mr. Farage said.
We will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. The 800,000 people that will get indefinite leave to remain unless this policy is revoked tend to be young, tend to be low skilled. They are going to be a huge burden on the state. What we do know is that 1 in 6 claimants of universal credit alone today, 1 in 6 is a foreign-born national.
So that's what he said. However, Lib Dem leader and part-time drummer Ed Davey fears this approach would undermine our public services. Let's have a listen.
Well, I worry what it's going to do to our NHS and care in our society, because it's not just temporary people, as I understand his proposals, but people who've got a permanent right to stay here. If he's really suggesting that, that could seriously undermine our public services.
Seriously undermine our public services, Kevin. I mean, it's probably bolder than any party's really gone on this. Yeah. He claims he's kind of hoovering up the mess, particularly of Boris Johnson.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? They talk about the so-called Boris wave. They repeatedly said that today. Zia Yusuf's got a piece in the Telegraph talking about the Boris wave. They even managed to get the phrase Boris wave into the Daily Mail, where Boris Johnson is a columnist, which will not go down well with Boris Johnson. So they're absolutely trying to nail this one to Boris, to the Tories, and you can absolutely see why politically they would want to do that. It's interesting because up until now it's always been about illegal immigration, hasn't it? Stopping the boats, channel crossings, which I think, you know, the political consensus in this country is that it needs to be stopped one way or another. But to move it to the discussion to legal immigration is, I think, it's a bit of a risk, a bit of a gamble by Nigel Farage, because a lot of people will think, well, hang on a minute, if these people are here legally, they've been given the right to remain, they work, they've passed all the possible checks that needed to be passed, they've done the right thing, and yet we're talking about throwing them out. These could be people, as David talked about there, who look after your gran in the care home, who look after your elderly father in hospital, whatever. If people start seeing those people, like a sort of Trump-style ICE going in and basically grabbing them by the collar and chucking them out of the country, I just wonder how that would go down in this country.
Because that's kind of the game he's playing there, isn't he? He's kind of trying to do something. But, I mean, his point isn't, you know, entirely without understanding, in that, you know, Boris Johnson talked about these skilled visas. It turned out these skilled visas meant you only had to earn over like 20 grand or something. Yeah,
it was this Australian-style point system that we heard about repeatedly all during the Brexit referendum.
It also meant that if you came over, you could then bring somebody else over in your family who didn't have to fulfil any criteria at all. So it was a bit of a mess, and in fact, overarching, when you look around the world, it was quite a generous system for those who want to come and work here.
Yeah, and that was...
You only had to get a job at Costa.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's why so many people did come. And you're right, that wasn't how the policy was sold by Boris Johnson during the Brexit referendum. It was all about the brightest and the best coming here once we can sort of retake control of our borders. And this is a legacy, I think, that is going to dog the Conservatives for many a year, and it's undoubtedly why Reform see a great opportunity here with this policy. But again, one thing about Nigel Farage, he's a great communicator, but he's not much of a details man. So, for instance, I talked about Zia Yusuf quoted a figure about £234 billion in the Telegraph today, saying that was, according to the Centre for Policy Studies, had looked at how much immigration, immigrants who claim benefits would end up costing the country. They put out, CPS put out a statement this morning basically distancing themselves from that figure, saying, oh, hang on a minute, that was based on erroneous information from the Office of Budget Responsibility. Do not rely on this figure. So that is a question mark. Now, they were asked about that at the press conference today. Nigel Farage said, well, actually, the true figure is probably higher, but we don't know that, so we've got to kind of take his word for it. The other interesting thing is the vast majority of foreign-born people who claim universal credit are part of the EU resettlement scheme, which is a separate thing, which was part of the Brexit withdrawal agreement. So the government are saying that's 770,000 people who would not be affected by what Nigel Farage is saying today. He said he'd give them a carve-out. So that's 750,000 people. That is a lot of people as well who would not be covered by this. So again, the devil is in the detail on this, I think.
I mean, if you, again, I said at the beginning, Kevin, that if you say, should a foreign national be able to claim welfare? If you put the question like that, most people would go, well, no, because I wouldn't expect to claim it in another country in a million years. But of course, the detail could be rather different. It could be somebody who's been here for 12 years and, you know, as a number of people in that position have jobs that, you know, companies depend on, and that's going to be the other. And I know he's saying, look, we'll do it by a case-by-case basis, but I would imagine the paperwork involved in that is absolutely vast.
Oh, it would be astronomical. And we saw, again, I mean, how the government handled the Windrush scandal of a few years ago. These were people who'd been here for literally 50 years and suddenly were being told, you've no right to be here. So, you know, there will always be cases like that, and yeah, on the face of it, I can understand why this will play very well with a lot of the Reform base and support people who maybe voted even Labour at the last election, Conservative, and think, actually, you know what, I like the sound of this, but the implementation of it, I think, would be very difficult. And as I say, we've got to try and, as you say, it's our job to scrutinise it and drill down into the figures to see if is it quite as it's been sold.
Let's go to this second story. Huge story, of course, that we were expecting, happened over the weekend. Hamas, though, have declared victory after Keir Starmer was accused of handing a, quote, prize for terrorism by recognising a future Palestinian state. The PM said the UK would officially support the creation of a Palestinian state to revive the hopes of peace in the Middle East. Let's have a listen to the Prime Minister.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine.
Unequivocal stuff. However, Foreign Secretary David Lammy said recognition alone won't ease the humanitarian crisis in Gaza or help free hostages without a proper ceasefire deal. Here's what he said.
That any decision to recognise a Palestinian state, if that were to take place later on today, does not make a Palestinian state happen overnight. That has to be part of a peace process. It has to be based on 1967 borders. It has to be based on a shared capital in Jerusalem. That will be for final status discussion. But it is to keep that process alive, a process that the United Kingdom has committed to over successive governments. So that is the decision. It is not to say, as night follows day, you recognise one day and a Palestinian state appears the next.
I should say former Foreign Secretary, of course. I mean, there it is. I mean, there's no ambiguity on this, Kevin.
None whatsoever, no.
Keir Starmer joins what is a fairly long list of other countries recognising Palestine. What is in it for... What do you think the reasons are behind this for the Prime Minister?
I mean, I think a lot of it is domestic politics, actually. You know, we know he's under an awful lot of pressure. Labour are not doing well in the opinion polls, but he personally is under an awful lot of pressure. This will play very well with Labour MPs who, by and large, are very grumpy right now, to put it mildly, not happy with him at all. But this will play well with a lot of them who have been calling for recognition of a Palestinian state. There's also the fact that we saw it last year at the general election, a lot of Gaza independents, 4 or 5 of them won last year, quite big surprise. One of them, Jonathan Ashworth, you know, very senior Labour figure, he got beaten. They almost took West Streeting's seat in London. So I think part of it is to try and ward off that threat that a lot of Labour Muslim voters, or maybe former Labour voters who are not happy obviously with the situation in Gaza, will think, well, maybe that will help to win back some of them to Labour. So there is very much a domestic element to this, to try and take some of the heat off them, basically. But you're right, we're not just doing it on our own. Canada, France are also announcing it at the same time. But I think what's interesting is you look at the reaction. Hamas have welcomed it. They've said, thanks very much. This is
great. The last thing in it, isn't it?
It's just a terrible look.
An international terrorist organisation has said, thank you, Keir Starmer.
Yeah. quite
For
absolutely.
acknowledging us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, the government would say that's not what they're doing, but that's how it's been perceived. And it's also been perceived that way by a lot of Jewish people in this country. I saw the front page of the Jewish News basically saying that it was a reward for October the 7th. Starmer rewards Hamas for October the 7th. That's the front page headline. I mean, again, that is not what Keir Starmer wants to see. And Labour Friends of Israel, which is a powerful group within the Labour Party, they're very unhappy about this as well. So it's, and it may have solved an issue with one section of the Labour Party, but created others.
Could he not have just said, look, if you release all the hostages, then we will consider acknowledging you as a state?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact there was no mention of hostages in that, I think to many people that's just beyond offensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think people would have been much more agreeable to the idea and to the policy if the heavy condition was we will only do it if there's an end to the war, the hostages are released, Hamas are defeated, something like that. But to do it now, while the war is still going on and there is no prospect of ending it, and while hostages are still in captivity, then it just doesn't look great. And also it reduces Britain's leverage with Israel as well. I mean, relations between the UK government and the Israeli government were already through the floor, to be honest, and this has just made it even worse. So any attempts that we have to say to Israel, look, stop, for heaven's sake, bombing indiscriminately, stop killing so many civilians, but they're just not going to listen.
I wonder if, and this kind of ties into something we've been talking about for the last few days, Kevin, that is Keir Starmer, is his hope now, because there was that point where he was sort of like slightly chasing the reform thing, is it now a complete turnaround? And, you know, between him and Morgan McSweeney, sort of Snowball and Napoleon, have decided that they're going to actually go the other way. They're going to go left, because there's no point in going anywhere else, because that's where they've got the greatest chance of galvanising support.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll certainly give up. Certainly Morgan McSweeney won't, I mean, give up that pursuing the reform vote. But I think on this one area, I think they realise that they're very vulnerable on the left to the Greens, but also maybe less so now given that they've imploded, but your party, Corbyn, Zara Sultana outfit, that there's no doubt, I think, that a lot of Labour people, very senior Labour people, are just as worried about losing votes to the left as they are as losing votes to the right. And if that was to happen in the next election, if the Labour vote was to splinter in all directions, there'd be an awful lot of trouble.
Of course. Stay with us, Kevin. More stories still to come. Over to you as well. 0344 499 1000. Particularly, I mean, on any of these issues, by the way, whether it's about Keir Starmer's, what some see as a kind of caving in, whatever it was all about, whatever the purposes were of, well, essentially telling an international terrorist group, we recognise you. There's a legitimacy to what's going on here. That's how it will be interpreted by many. Thoughts on that? And Nigel Farage, his new immigration pledge. Very straightforward. Will it work? You can drop us a voice note on that, 0344 499 1000. Or, of course, you can message 87222.
the Muslim leaders in this country, those who are spreading and proselytizing the Muslim faith, believe they don't really need terrorism anymore to get their message across. They are doing it through the ballot box and the womb.
Exactly.
And that is an expression that was accepted by a leading Muslim member of the House of Lords. And this is the problem we face. Yep. While we sit there like frogs in a saucepan, the water's boiling. In fact, I think we're already hard-boiled.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 24 minutes after 1 o'clock. Let's get a voice note on the UK recognising Palestine. This comes from Karen.
Hi, Ian. As Keir Starmer said, he is the Prime Minister of this great country. He's doing a lot to destroy this great country, and recognising Palestine as a state is absolutely ludicrous. He's just put a target on every Jewish person's head in this country. I cannot believe that he is appeasing terrorists. What a disgrace. The most hated PM in British history. Wow, what a legacy he's leaving. He has to go. This is terrible. 90% of British people do not want to recognise Palestine as a Palestinian state.
And that's the curious situation that Keir Starmer has left, that taste in many people's mouths. Karen, thank you very much for that. Kevin Schofield is with us, political editor of HuffPost UK. Let's move to this story, Kevin. Job centres will start contacting sickness benefit claimants with no work requirements as ministers are targeting 2 million people in a bid to cut the welfare bill. Those with long-term health issues will be offered training and support to prepare for employment. Let's have a listen to their hiring ad.
More than 2 million people in today's welfare system get no help and no prospects, and that's the shocking inheritance that I'm determined to change. And that's why we've deployed 1,000 work coaches across the job centre network, including here at Barking Job Centre, to give people the help, the skills and the employment support that will get them out of their current situation and into work.
I mean, seeing a minister in an Essex job centre is it's only one step away from the high-vis jacket thing when they have a wander around a building site, isn't it? Or JCB or something. But there it is. That's their new aim, to try and get people off the sick, Kevin.
I mean, you'll know this as well as me, Ian. How many times have we read or written this story? I mean,
100 times.
Countless governments, doesn't matter, Labour, Conservative, you name it. This has been the plan, the aim for probably decades, and yet here we are still in the same situation now. Pat McFadden is the new Working Pension Secretary. Obviously he got the job in the reshuffle. Liz Kendall, a rather ill-starred time as in the same job. Obviously her planned welfare reforms were completely gutted because there was a huge Labour backbench rebellion, and Pat McFadden's got to somehow come in and reform welfare, cut the bill, which, let's face it, but at the end of the day, that's what they need to do, while appeasing Labour MPs. It's very, very difficult, if not impossible.
Do you know what jumps out at me from this is, you know, we just heard Farage at his press conference, what everybody thinks about Farage. Yeah. But here's a sort of tell it like it is, man. This is what we're going to do. We're fed up with this, and we're not going to take it anymore. Yeah. We're as mad as hell, all of that. Then dear old Pat comes along like, hi, I'm in a Billericay job centre. Farage can make stuff land like others can't. And I think all those sort of what we'd call the mainstream parties are going to have a horrendous game of catch-up in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Until they realise, you know, when Yvette Cooper, as Home Secretary, stood and gave that statement about the, you know, the latest state of play with migration or whatever it was, just sounded like she was reading off a press release that a couple of old spads had written the night before. There was no fire in the belly. There's none of that. And I think there's an appetite now for that.
Yeah, there is, and you see it in America as well with Trump, and you see, you know, in Argentina as well. You know, people like these charismatic politicians who are good communicators. I mean, Pat McFadden is actually one of the better communicators, I think, in the government, but he's not Nigel Farage. He doesn't have that. He'd admit it himself. He doesn't have that personality. He's not very bombastic. He can get a message across. But you're right. I mean, another person who I think is probably more like it is Robert Jenrick. He seems to have kind of, even if you don't agree with what he says, he does quite well with those videos on X. Boris Johnson actually was decent at, in his own way.
True.
People liked him just because he was a little bit different. And yeah, I think you're right. I think the voters are now ready for, or more receptive to, just unconventional politicians. They're sick of the normal politics. Really,
it's interesting, isn't it? It's I mean, it's the same as you say. It's the same in the States. You know, I mean, Trump's not really a Republican in the conventional sense.
Definitely not.
You know, every time I talk to a kind of, you know, a senior Republican on this, they talk about the sort of Reagan era, who was the epitome of all of that.
Yeah,
that's gone.
Yeah,
they're not even chasing it anymore.
No, and he was a great communicator.
He was superb.
As a former actor, you
Yeah,
know, he knew how to hit his lines.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, Trump's just on a different planet, really.
I think so.
In many ways.
Final one here. Households hit with higher bills in £1 billion racket that sees wind farms paid to turn off power. So Greg Jackson, CEO of Octopus Energy, aims for the company to generate renewable energy for 15 million UK homes by 2030. They're investing heavily in wind and solar, promoting dynamic pricing to reduce energy bills. I mean, this dynamic pricing thing does kind of split the room a little bit on that. I have to say, Kevin, I cannot work this one out for love nor money. This wind stuff, what was it Trump said over here last week? It's the greatest waste of money or something like that.
Yeah, he keeps.
I heard a physicist this morning saying it's the most efficient form of energy.
Yeah, I mean, you paid your money to take your choice. Donald Trump seems to be really hung up on how many birds get killed. Yeah. He's always going about how many birds at the bottom of these
terrible thing.
But this is a bizarre story. So this is wind farms being switched off because basically the grid cannot cope with the amount of electricity that they're producing, so therefore the wind farm operators are being told, right, stop producing anymore, but we will still pay you as if you were producing it, because it's not your fault. You're keeping up your end of the bargain by producing the electricity.
So we'll give you some money.
But then
he's even criticised it. The CEO.
He says it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he says we're getting paid money. We're supposed to.
Greg, just give it back.
Yeah, I don't think he goes that far. I think he draws the line at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's absolutely bizarre, but it's just kind of farcical situation.
That's very strange.
Especially when people's bills are going up.
Yeah, of course. Kevin, we hit the clock. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Back to Westminster.
Yes.
Never stops this man. Great to have you on with us. Kevin Schofield, political editor of HuffPost UK, with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. We are going to speak to a former immigration minister in a moment as well, just on this Reform UK pledge. Is it likely to work, this pledge? I mean, when you hear it said out loud, some of the words are seductive. It sounds very interesting. In fairness, I've not heard a political party go this far before. And that's all great, but can it actually work? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. We'll go to your calls and comments shortly. Lots to get through. Maggie Oliver joining us a little later as well for some really disturbing news on some of those grooming gang revelations. We'll talk about that. And Nigel Farage making the headlines again. It's a Monday. He makes a big announcement, whether he's hooked a politician from another party or he's putting some meat on the bones of policies that are attracting what appears to be, according to the polls, a huge amount of support for his party. Today he's made a pledge to deport hundreds of thousands of migrants under Reform UK's Operation Restoring Justice plan. He's argued mass deportations are necessary due to public anger over channel crossings and the like. Speaking at the Reform press conference earlier today, he said he'll abolish the indefinite leave to remain that happens at the moment in this country. Let's have a listen.
We will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. The 800,000 people that will get indefinite leave to remain unless this policy is revoked tend to be young, tend to be low-skilled. They are going to be a huge burden on the state. What we do know is that 1 in 6 claimants of universal credit alone today, 1 in 6 is a foreign-born national.
In a moment, we'll speak to Alex Wilson, Assembly Member for Reform UK. First, Kevin Foster, former Immigration Minister under Boris Johnson. Kevin, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Was this Mr Farage essentially having a pop at you, or certainly the era in which you were in government? He talked about the Boris wave. This was all under Boris Johnson, these curious amounts of licences and visas that were given out at that time. Was this directed at that particular era, did you sense?
Well, actually, remember the peak of visa issue was actually under Rishi Sunak, not under Boris Johnson. There had also been some plans to change some of the thresholds around the visa system in the early part of 2022 that did not go ahead following the move to remove Boris from power. So just to put that quite firmly on the table. So in terms of where it is. But, yeah, I accept it was under last government. I think what's interesting from Reform is obviously looking forward, it's always relatively easy to change and argue for change of rules, and then you just need to debate the differences. I think there'll be some issues with this, like we saw a bit when he made a dramatic statement around Afghanistan. Everyone will be going back if they committed a crime, and then a week later we heard perhaps not women and children. With this announcement, you do start looking at things like, for example, those who are here EU citizens under the post-Brexit treaties who've been here a long time, who effectively had an ILR-style status granted to them when the UK left the European Union. There's Irish citizens. We have reciprocal arrangements, very strong historic ones with Irish citizens that UK, you and I with British passport can go and live in the Republic. A citizen of the Republic can come and live here for obvious historical reasons dating back to the Partition of Ireland in 1922. So there are some details there, and there'll be some bits around things like veterans of the armed forces. But where the real issues perhaps come is how far does this go back? Is it the whole status? Because if it is, then that starts bringing in things like the Windrush generation, where people might be a lot less keen to see people who've been here perhaps 40, 50 years removed from the country than whatever views people have on those who perhaps come and worked in relatively low-paid jobs in recent years.
Just talk us through, if you can, Kevin, what was happening back then, back when you were working in that particular government, 2019 to 2022, and then beyond, as you rightly say, under Rishi Sunak. Was there does a senior civil servant come along and say, guys, we're just short of people. We need more people. And so a new visa is created or an existing visa is modified, however that happens. And tens and hundreds of thousands of these things are given out, not for skilled workers, but for actually relatively low-skilled workers. £20,000 odd a year, plus you can bring your wife. So trebles all round if you're the person that wants to make a life here. But that did seem a very generous way of people entering the UK.
Well, remember at the time we faced all sorts of opposition around the ending of free movement, which at the time, you go back to 2019, anyone with an EU passport could come and live in in the UK. So the system was coming in to replace that. We then had the pandemic. The thresholds were due to have been altered. That was suspended during the pandemic because income and place went all over the place. And of course, you remember there were big campaigns around getting care workers and other things to come into the UK as well. So there was some of that. I think where the mistake that was made, the fundamental one, was by 22, with the pandemic coming to an end. That was the time to, for example, abolish the discount on the skilled worker system and to start putting the thresholds up in terms of salary. The salary thresholds were never meant to be set in stone for a generation. They were intended to rise along with wages, and also a genuine look at what were the trends there. It also took too long to do things like stop dependence on a certain student visa, those doing a one-year master's. And I would also say on the care workers, when we started to see people abusing that one quite strongly, again, should be more quickly. But I will just say, and I suspect Reform will try and argue against this, but it was actually a lot of that was due to happen under Mr. Sunak, and a lot of that didn't happen for some time. In fact, that's partly what prompted Robert Jenrick's resignation, of course.
Yeah, indeed. How do you feel when you look at this, Kevin, as a Conservative? I assume you're still a Conservative, unless you've legged it over to Reform UK in the last couple of hours that we don't know about. Maybe you're on your way. But in terms of, the administration you served under, you look at what was happening then, and now you see Nigel Farage, despite there being some issues, as you rightly say, Irish citizens, those that were promised indefinite leave who were EU citizens, etc. But there is a real appetite for this, isn't there? There's a real sense the British public are looking at this and saying this is all wrong. You can't be a foreign national and claim welfare. If you're working in Costa or a £20,000 a year job, we don't need those kind of people to work here. We've got plenty of our own youngsters who can't find a work or at the moment are deciding they're not going to work. What do you think now, looking back? Do you think, God, we missed a trick here? If only we got strict on this, Reform wouldn't be doing what they're doing now.
Well, I think certainly if in 22 there'd been a quicker move to, for example, do some of the things I've just outlined, that would certainly have capped off some of the numbers coming in later part of 2022 and early 2023, the big numbers that some people quote. The debate, though, let's remember about 3 years ago, it was a bit of a different debate. When I used to go in the media, certainly 4 or 5 years ago, every time there was a skill shortage in the country, apparently, in some media, I would say not talkTV, not one or two other channels I work with a bit, but certainly if I went on something like the BBC, apparently it'd be my fault there wasn't butchers in the country or truck drivers or various other things. Sectors where you could actually have a really big, good debate about what exactly were they investing in training. Truck driving was a particularly good example of where it's actually quite hard to get funded to train to be a truck driver. Or, for example, in other sectors where I think we'll end up coming in with things like care, and that will also bring up the issue around care funding, is actually there's historical issues of not giving the type of terms and conditions that really will attract people in and actually give the adequate reward for people who do those jobs, rather than turning to migration as an alternative. And the debate at those times, sometimes are very different, where you'd be facing a sector being complaining there wasn't a visa, and yet not really being questioned about, well, what's that and what is your plan to try and address that long term?
Kevin, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Kevin Foster, former Immigration Minister under Boris Johnson, 2019 to 2022. So we had a good chunk there at the Home Office. Thoughts on that? Alex Wilson, Assembly Member for Reform UK, is also with us. Well, Alex, you heard what Kevin said. I mean, the debate isn't really between you and Kevin, but really the announcement today from Mr Farage. There are some areas that some people are concerned about, but broadly speaking, this probably goes further than I've ever heard any political party go in terms of really trying to tackle what many people perceive as a massive injustice.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thank you for having me on the show this afternoon. It's great to be here talking about what was another big, bold announcement from Reform. We're very much leading the debate, setting the agenda, and getting some ideas out there so we can have these discussions. Fundamentally, it comes down to a question of fairness. We think that the UK welfare system should focus and prioritise on UK citizens at the heart of it, and this is what this policy is about. As we heard this morning, 1 in 6 people claiming universal credit are foreign-born nationals. That equated to about £9 billion in the last year. And that's money that simply the government doesn't have to spend on this. So it's about restoring fairness, being able to allocate funds on focusing on putting British people first, and tackling this problem, which is a problem that that the country has inherited from the Conservatives and continuing under Labour. Some interesting questions you asked Kevin there, and particularly when you asked him if they'd have got a grip on this, would we be doing what we're doing? Well, in so many ways, what Reform is doing now is kind of positioning ourselves to pick up the mess that the Conservatives and now Labour have left, because both of those parties have failed, and that's why we need to go further and faster and bigger and bolder. That's why we're having the kind of announcement we had today.
No, nobody would, I think, criticise any party for being ambitious. We need more ambition, of course, in politics, Alex. But there are some people who kindly observe that actually this is such a big bureaucratic process that you would have to undertake to even put a kink in the side of the problem, that it would take generations, not a couple of years.
Absolutely, it's a big, big problem, and that's why we're talking about it now rather than waiting until just before the election. There's a whole process of policy formulation that will go on between now and the election in, 3 years' time? But we're starting that discussion now, putting these ideas out now so people can be aware of what we're talking about, and we can start doing the numbers. Now, as far as the numbers themselves are concerned and the thresholds, all that will follow, because we need to be able to adjust that to the circumstances at the time of the election. But this is about setting out the very, very clear principle that British taxpayers' money should be going to help British citizens first. We are not the world's food bank. We've always been a generous and tolerant and welcoming country for those in genuine need, but we are not here to provide an alternative lifestyle, a cheaper lifestyle for people who want to come over here and frankly take advantage of the system. So yes, there are certain areas where there will be exemptions. Zia set out quite clearly this morning about this acute skills shortage visas, so that will focus. The obvious example that comes to mind there is on the care industry, and we know that social care is a big problem in itself. Yeah. And does rely heavily on migrant workers. But we need to take this system that we've got, use the opportunity to train native Brits as well to take on those jobs, and fundamental questions of fairness. That's what it's all about. All right, Alex, great to have you on as ever. Thank you. Alex Wilson, Assembly Member for Reform UK, with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Will it work? Does it even begin to touch the sides? I don't know why anybody would criticise a party who are saying, look, if you're a foreign national, sorry, part of the deal, even if you've got, if you've got a gig here, there's going to be some element of, you'll use the NHS, for example, but claiming welfare, well, no. I mean, really, no. I don't think any... Would you expect to go to another country and be able to go... If I walked into a Madrid welfare office working in Spain, I don't for one second think I would have any right or be entitled to say, can I put myself on family credit or whatever the heck it's called this week? I don't think most people would expect that. So how have we done it so badly? We're not alone, by the way. But why have we got it so badly wrong? This is what Reform are claiming they will tackle. Will it work? 0344 499 1000.
the Muslim leaders in this country, those who are spreading and proselytizing the Muslim faith, believe they don't really need terrorism anymore to get their message across. They are doing it through the ballot box and the womb.
Exactly.
And that is an expression that was accepted by a leading Muslim member of the House of Lords. And this is the problem we face. Yep. While we sit there like frogs in a saucepan, the water's boiling. In fact, I think we're already hard-boiled.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 10 to 2. Let's just move to this story before we go to your comments. It's been revealed that South Yorkshire Police held intelligence on child abusers in Rotherham for 14 years before they were convicted, during which time the abuse continued. The Alex J report found that 1,400 children were exploited by grooming gangs in the town between 1997 and 2003. Meanwhile, a four-star Hilton hotel in Ealing, West London, is now housing asylum seekers at taxpayers' expense, including a convicted terrorist who went on to rape a woman. Does this miserable story ever end? This was in Hyde Park. The hotel no longer operates as a luxury venue, with all rooms now occupied by asylum seekers. Let's talk to Maggie Oliver, friend of the show, former detective with Greater Manchester Police, whistleblower on the Rochdale grooming gang case, and, of course, founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation. Good afternoon to you, Maggie. Nice to have you with us. I mean, just that first story that I read out there, I mean, this is in a long list of things that are jaw-dropping and unbelievable, but it seems beyond comprehension that anyone could have had this information and sat on it and done nothing.
It does, but sadly, Ian, it isn't just in Rotherham that this has happened. You know, when I resigned from Greater Manchester Police, I know I'm known because of Rochdale, but I had worked on a previous job called Operation Augusta within GMP in 2004 and 5. GMP closed down that job. We had 97 abusers on a database. We knew they were raping children on a daily basis, and yet the Gold Command Group in GMP decided they wouldn't put resources in, and that's the official finding. 20 years on, those men, most of them are walking the streets, having abused God knows how many other children. So these are systemic failures. And, you know, you've introduced me as the founder of the Maggie Oliver Foundation, but earlier this year, I made a limited company with some other victims and supporters called Action for Accountability Limited, because I do not believe for one single moment that the CPS will hold any individual senior police officer to account for what I consider gross criminal neglect. You know, you cannot do anything more evil than turn away from vulnerable children who are being raped just because you choose not to put the resources in. So this report, it doesn't name any officers. Augusta, that I worked on, 5 senior officers were named. It was referred to the IOPC. I've still never seen that report, but no action was taken because the senior officers refused to be interviewed. The whole system is broken, and it's set up, I know it's depressing, but it actually is set up to protect these public servants who have failed in their duty to protect children. And for me, it's as clear as daylight. We need accountability. And, you know, we're going to try and bring a private prosecution against some of these individuals, because I truly believe, Ian, that's the only way we will see change. If chief constables today making these decisions know that there is a remote possibility that they may stand in a criminal court in 10 or 20 years' time, I can guarantee you they will make different decisions today. As it is now, the system gathers around them and protects them, and it really is shocking. You know, it's not news to me, though, Ian.
I know. And can you remember, Maggie, I mean, how would those conversations have gone where somebody is saying, so officers on the ground, people like yourself are saying, look, you know, we've got, you know, we think there's dozens of victims just in this one patch. We're pretty sure that there's enough intelligence to lead to there, and there, as in the perpetrators. What was the logic of a senior officer saying, no, we'll leave that alone? What was the thinking there?
I think you know, that's why I resigned, because no thinking could ever justify that. But, you know, I think the conclusion has to be that for me, there were three things that fed into it. The first one, most of these children were from difficult backgrounds. So the kids were written off as unimportant. And I often say, if this was Keir Starmer's daughter or Boris Johnson's daughter, would they have said that no action would be taken? The second thing is that there was undoubtedly an unwillingness to rock the multicultural bandwagon. And so rather than cause, because the vast majority of abusers in these cases are Pakistani Muslim men, and there was a deliberate attempt to cover it up. And the third thing is that they wouldn't put resources in, because, as I say, they thought these kids didn't matter, and who was going to fight for them? Because many did come from difficult backgrounds, and, you know, maybe broken homes sometimes, living in care. So those three things all fed into this massive neglect of duty. And, you know, my work in my charity now, it's not, you know, these kids never really truly recover. And it's not just the abuse that's destroyed them. It's knowing that the system meant to protect them has let them down so completely that they had nowhere else to go. So I want to see heads roll. I do want to see senior police officers and social workers in prison. I honestly do want to see that. And it's not about an individual. They are all equally responsible, in my opinion. You know, our Action for Accountability Limited, we've got lawyers and barristers looking at where the heaviest, the strongest evidence is to take some of these individuals to court and hold them to account. I don't know where that will lead yet, but I know that I will do my absolute best to make sure that somebody carries the can for decades of neglect. 100%.
It's interesting you mentioned about these experiences of these young girls staying with them for life. I mean, I would imagine in pretty much all cases it would stay for life in different forms. We're reading that one grooming gang victim killed herself, according to a coroner. Victim of Rochdale child grooming gang killed herself after years of torment over the scandal. This is a ruling by the coroner. Charlotte Tetley, 33, was hit by a train in Macclesfield last September. Around almost a year to the day, her inquest heard that she'd suffered significant sexual abuse at the hands of a child sex ring and had moved to Macclesfield back in 2023 after her abuser had moved back to Rochdale. And the coroner in South Cheshire, Sarah Murphy, said Miss Tetley was discharged from hospital despite expressing suicidal thoughts and cautioned health bosses to take action to prevent further deaths. So, I mean, she was almost let down by the system twice there in many respects, but it's of no surprise that a victim of this level of organised abuse would end up taking their own life. Sadly, that doesn't shock us.
That young woman's family are being supported by the Maggie Oliver Foundation. I've met a mum and a sister, and I have to say that her family are absolutely traumatised that she has been named in public. You know, when somebody has a lifetime anonymity order, if they've been a victim of sexual abuse, when they die, that is removed. But that young woman, she had been failed monumentally. And what caused her to do that? First of all, she should have been admitted because she was saying she was suicidal. Secondly, her abuser was released from prison without her having even been made aware, just like young Ruby in Rochdale, who came face to face with her abuser in a supermarket when she didn't No, he was out of prison. Yeah. So, wherever you scratch the surface, Ian, the criminal justice system lets victims down on a monumental scale. Maybe that's why it's called the criminal justice system. Yep. We're all set up to give the criminals justice, whereas the victims are an afterthought. It's horrifying.
Yeah, indeed. Maggie, just finally, we've only got about 20 seconds. This new or latest announced inquiry, what's the status of that? Is it happening? If so, when does it start? It's
a complete and utter shambles. We've got an umbrella group of 25 survivors at the moment. We've written to the Home Office. We've had a letter from Jess Phillips. We haven't had any official response or invitation to be part of these conversation. And the way I see it, after my experience with ICSA, is that they are cherry picking the people that they want to speak to. It will not be a transparent and full inquiry. I have no doubt that it will be another attempt to cover up the truth. So we have to find other ways to get to the bottom of this.
Well, indeed, and again, I always say this, it's amazing you're keeping the momentum up on this. And Maggie, thank you for speaking with us. We will speak many more times, and let's continue to keep this as high profile as we can. Maggie Oliver, former cop, former detective with Greater Manchester Police and whistleblower on the Rochdale grooming gang case. Let's get the news headlines now at 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. Yes, it is the home of common sense. Welcome back. As you've been hearing, Nigel Farage has pledged to deport hundreds of thousands of migrants. This is Reform UK's Operation Restoring Justice campaign. He was speaking this morning at a press conference. He estimates the cost of 800,000 plus individuals expected to qualify for leave to remain in the next 3 years is around about £230 billion. He said this is an absolutely eye-watering sum of money. It is. He's identified all the issues, the key areas that are really riling people right now, particularly when there's a bit of a cost of living crisis going on. The question is this: will Mr Farage's plan actually work? I mean, let's hope it does. Your thoughts, your take on that. Also this afternoon, job centres will start contacting sickness benefit claimants with no work requirements as ministers target 2 million people in a bid to cut the welfare bill. Those with long-term health issues will be offered training and support to prepare for the world of employment. There it is. Funny how you've got to do that. Prepare you for the world of employment. And as you will, I'm sure, be more than aware now, Hamas have declared victory on Sunday after Keir Starmer was accused of handing a prize for terrorism by recognising a future Palestinian state. Keir Starmer said the UK would officially support the creation of a Palestinian state to revive the hope of peace in the Middle East. Does this man not know how religious extremism, mentalists and terrorism work? That heady cocktail. Yeah, sitting down and going, oh, we recognise you. Ain't going to happen, mate. It will not happen. It doesn't work in that way. These people think they've been given the go light from God, for goodness sake. 0344 499 1000. Loads of comment coming through. Steve says, afternoon, Ian, regarding Reform UK's press conference earlier, we have two options here. Carry on with the status quo or try something new. I would like you to answer your own question. Stick or twist, says Steve in Wales. Yeah, it's a fair question. In the absence of anything else, you've got to give it a go, haven't you? It's how effective it could be based on the amount of bureaucracy required. Parties in opposition, whether they're Reform, Labour, Tories or whatever, they're in a sort of luxury position when you're in opposition. You can promise all manner of things. When you get the big job, I think this is what Labour have discovered. Oh, well, it's a little trickier when you actually have to do it. Let's talk to Jack Elson, political editor of The Sun. Jack, good afternoon to you. We can't hear you, Jack. I don't know. Are you? Is it the classic? Oh, there we go. We can hear you loud. Yeah, there was always that moment, isn't there? So it's funny, isn't it? We've been using Zooms and Teams and God knows what else for years now, and every time you still have your fingers crossed, wondering if it's going to work. Glad to have you with us, Jack, as ever. Let's start with Nigel Farage. Let's have a listen to what he said at that press conference this morning.
Will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. The 800,000 people that will get indefinite leave to remain unless this policy is revoked tend to be young, tend to be low-skilled. They are going to be a huge burden on the state. What we do know is that 1 in 6 claimants of universal credit alone today, 1 in 6 is a foreign-born national.
So the numbers are big, Jack. The problem is there for all to see. Can Mr Farage solve it?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question at the moment, isn't it? And, you know, listen, I think that these sort of Monday morning press conferences by Nigel Farage has become a bit of a staple of the Westminster week. He often tries to tackle big problems facing the country. Migration is obviously one of them, and welfare clearly another. And Nigel Farage, by trying to link the two, is clearly tapping into the public's frustration on both issues. Can he solve it? Well, he's come out with some pretty big policies today, scrapping indefinite leave to remain. He reckons it will save about 250 billion. Those numbers have been disputed, and the think tank which they relied on their calculations from have come out this morning and said that actually those numbers are a bit outdated and the OBR have disowned them and they're trying to come up with some new estimates. But I think Nigel Farage will still be pretty giddy with the headlines he's getting this afternoon, because essentially, once again, it is Reform leading the airwaves, leading the websites, leading the bulletins, with a massive crackdown on 1, migration, and 2, welfare. And, you know, we could talk about $1 billion here and $1 billion there, but it is a statement of intent by the leader of Reform UK, and the other parties are now chasing their tail on it. And, you know, you said it just then, Ian, you know, opposition parties often have the luxury of being able to throw big claims out there without actually having to back it up in terms of implementation. But, Nigel Farage clearly at the moment is the big victor of that. And, we do live in a vibes era of politics. And, many people will share the frustrations echoed by Nigel Farage, even if maybe not all of his sums are up at this point. Well,
it's interesting. We were talking with Kevin Schofield in the last hour just about the, you used that phrase there, was it vibes matter? Because it is. It's so true. I mean, we know the same is happening in America. People's requirements and appetites for what they want their politicians to say and how they want them to come across have changed wildly. And I think there's a general sense that the two main parties, Tory and Labour, where we see a senior figure wheeled out, they've got a press release in their hand written by a couple of spads the night before, and there doesn't seem to be any passion behind it. There's no real fire in the belly. Nigel Farage rocks up, and every single time it lands. It lands whether you like him or not. He says it like he believes it. He looks frustrated. He shares the incredulity. And this is more than just a salesman. But it's that kind of brand of politics that is serving Reform UK really rather well.
Yeah, you're totally right. And listen, I haven't actually been through this big document which Nigel Farage put out this morning. There's a chance he's got his absolute sums bang on. There's a chance he hadn't. I'm not making any assessment of that. But in terms of the actual authenticity factor, I think you've got this bang on, because often lots of politicians, be it Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch, are accused of coming out, giving a press conference, sounding like droids, and not really having that sort of buy-in factor and reflecting the frustrations which many voters are feeling in their everyday lives. Whatever you think of Nigel Farage, he gets that absolutely spot on. He speaks the language of millions of voters out there who are feeling that they haven't actually had a voice over the past few decades. They've been left behind. They're in constituencies which potentially haven't borne the fruits of globalization. They voted for many things at different elections, and they always seem to get the complete opposite. No greater that than migration and welfare. And Farage comes out and he says exactly what they want to hear. Yeah. And he says that people shouldn't be able to come over here and claim benefits. Many people agree with that. He says that people shouldn't be able to come over here and live indefinitely if you're not contributing to the economy. Most people agree with that. And what he's really trying to do now is, one, come out there and grab the attention and grab the spotlight, but also really hang this problem around the necks of the last government. It's very interesting, this whole Boris wave thing, because Boris Johnson, I think even a few months ago, was still being seen by many Conservatives and many on the right as this king over the water. He's always revelled in that sort of king over the water, the one to come and save the Tory party image. I think that there would have been, if Kemi Badenoch had gone down to really bad local elections next May, there would have been a call to bring back Boris. You don't hear that much anymore. And that is because immigration has become such a factor in public discourse. Yeah. And Nigel Farage had really punched his bruises. The fact that Boris Johnson oversaw this record amount of legal migration into the country, that actually most people now are saying he wouldn't be a viable candidate to come back because he oversaw this massive influx into the country. And Nigel Farage is really hamming up that point today.
And just, we mentioned the contrast of different political operators. Let's have a listen to this, because this is a government announcement from Labour. Job centres will start contacting sickness benefit claimants with no work requirements as ministers target 2 million people in a bid to cut the welfare system. Those with long-term health issues will also be offered training and support and the like. Let's have a listen to the Job Centre promo ad for hiring. Here it is.
More than 2 million people in today's welfare system get no help and no prospects, and that's the shocking inheritance that I'm determined to change. And that's why we've deployed 1,000 work coaches across the Job Centre network, including here at Barking Job Centre, to give people the help, the skills and the employment support that will get them out of their current situation and into work.
So that's how they roll in terms of announcement over there at Labour HQ. Send Pat McFadden to Barking. In fact, when I first saw that, I didn't hear the audio. I thought it was some bloke signing on, which it may well be in 4 years' time. Who knows? But that is the
now, Ian. Now.
I know, and Pat McFadden is a well-respected man. I do understand that. However, it doesn't kind of. I know it's a different kind of announcement, but it does sort of rather show you the slightly more vanilla side of how we've done politics for most of the last few decades.
Oh, Ian, I've heard announcements about work coaches and getting more people trained up for work the best part of 5 years. And the welfare bill still seems to climb and climb and climb and get ever more expensive. So I'm pretty sceptical when it comes to someone picking up the phone, calling a benefit claimant and asking them if they want more training, because I think that unless you make serious savings and get a serious stick out with this, it's really not going to cut it. And you're right, we do have seems to be a sort of a tale of two welfare announcements today. Yeah. One is talking about hundreds of billions of pounds in savings and exempting many people from the welfare system, and one is about picking up the phone and coaxing people to try and get more into work. And I think that the reshuffle which happened early this month, the government reshuffle, I think many people saw that putting Pat McFadden into the job as welfare secretary was a statement of intent that Keir Starmer genuinely was keen to make big savings in the benefits bill after bottling that pretty meagre £5 billion of welfare savings back in the summer. I hope that Pat McFadden has more to say on this, because at the moment, these announcements obviously welcome in themselves, but don't go anywhere near far enough. What many people would say needs to come down in a massive, staggering, eye-watering benefits bill. And so hopefully they will have another bite at the cherry instead of trying to make genuine savings with this. But he's at the moment, he seems to be a hostage to his own MPs with this. We've seen Keir Starmer push from pillar to post on all manner of subjects, be it benefits. Now the two-child benefit cap's rearing its head again. They seem to have given Bridget Phillipson license to come out and say that it's spiteful, and all but confirm that at some point they will end up scrapping it, whether it's Palestine and recognising a Palestine state. They do seem now to be really worried about the bubbling resentment on the Labour backbenches and the growing discontent with the leadership.
100%. And I guarantee when we talk in a year's time, Jack, that policy and Jack's starring role in barking will be a distant memory. There'll be no more said about it. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll watch with interest. Listen, Jack, great to have you on. Thank you. Jack Elsom, political editor at The Sun. Let's go to your calls. Lots to get through. Darryl is in Lincoln. Reference immigration and the Reform UK announcement today. What have you got for us, Darryl? Afternoon.
Yeah, I just think that what Nigel Farage is trying to say is basically that, immigration problem and the benefit situation, they are interlinked with each other, obviously, because, we've got so many people in this country unemployed and claiming benefits that are British people. And, if you can address that problem, because there's lots of jobs out there, I'm an agency truck driver, and I get phone calls every day offering me work, and it's I saved up for my HGV licence. It cost me £3,800 to save up for it, but I saved up for it, and in my previous job, and I forego a couple of holidays so that I could afford to do it.
Good for you.
But that's what you have to do. That's how life should be for everybody. And when you work abroad, I lived in Morocco for a while and in Saudi Arabia. Well, all the lower type jobs like taxi drivers, train drivers, bus drivers, truck drivers, shop, they're all done by people who live in those countries, who are the nationality of that country, because they are jobs for basically unqualified people who haven't got university degrees or whatever. And, they keep those jobs for the people of that country. So, so there's always plenty of jobs available. So, but what we've done in this country, we've done the reverse of that. We've brought people in to do those lower class jobs. And now we've got like 8 million people in this country claiming universal credit, and 4 million of those are unemployed who could work, and probably some. I know there's an element of those who don't want to work, but what they should be saying to people is, okay, you've got 6 months to get a job, or your credit stops. If you're able to work and you're capable of working,
100%.
and then if all those British people are taking all the jobs that are available out there, then the immigration problem will be solved.
Well, indeed. I mean, that could only have been the... I mean, I remember, as a previous guest made this point, Darryl, there was that era, wasn't it, a couple of years ago, when people were going on TV, bosses were saying we can't find any lorry drivers, we can't find any carpenters, we've got a shortage of plumbers. You know, there was that moment, and that's partly blamed for what kind of then happened back in 2020, when this influx of people came in. But did we need to do that?
Well, no, because, I mean, I can remember, when I was younger, I mean, I'm 60 years old now, but when I was back in the 80s, I can remember bus drivers, taxi drivers, train drivers, all those sort of people, lorry drivers, they were all English people, and when you went into a hospital, they were all English doctors, English nurses, and so on and so forth. And I've heard these people arguing, saying, oh, we need immigrants to support this country. Well, there weren't any then, and we didn't need them then. So
yeah, what's fundamentally changed? That's a great point. Listen, Darryl, I've got to move for no other reason. You've been great. That's a fabulous call. Thank you. And well done. I just love the story of, you wanted to become a trucker, so he saved up. That phrase, saved up. You don't hear that so often. You hear people put everything on the what's-it, don't they, and just sort of pay it back at some future date. 0344 499 1000. Comments on what is happening with Keir Starmer and Palestine. Comments on getting people back to work, and crucially, Reform's migration pledge. Will it work? 0344 499 1000.
The other thing that's absolutely extraordinary about this is that everybody who's there talks, I mean, there's awful things happening in that war. I don't want to deny that. But this won't make one iota of difference to one Palestinian child or individual or so on. It strengthens Hamas's control over the region because they can claim this as a victory internally. So for the ordinary Palestinians, it doesn't do anything either. What good does it do?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
22 minutes after 2 o'clock. One from Russ in Southend. I mentioned Bob the neurosurgeon in New Zealand, if he's going to have to redo his visa every few years. Russ says, I think Bob the neurosurgeon would pass any new immigration visa assessments with flying colours. Mohammed the Uber driver may struggle, though. Being very cynical there, are you suggesting there's a disproportionate amount of Uber drivers called Mohammed? You'll be telling me next there's a disproportionate amount of bricklayers called Terry. Come on. Made me chuckle there, Russ. Thank you for that. Max in Worcester says, what time and the political will? With time and the political will, then yes, it will work. This is reference Nigel Farage's policy or announcement this morning. Matt's in Cheshire. What do you make of it, Matt? Afternoon to you.
Hi, very good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
It's a beautiful day here. I don't know how it is down south.
Is it looking all right? Well, it was freezing this morning. 6 degrees when I woke up. Properly cold. Whack the heating on, put a coat on to walk the dog, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we had 75-mile-an-hour winds on Saturday night.
Yeah, it was a little windy as well over the weekend, so the umbrella nearly went.
It's been absolutely fantastic the last 2 days. Clear blue skies.
Fantastic. You're almost doing a weather forecast here, Matt. This is sounding good. We'll get the travel news next from you.
The weather forecast from Manchester is that you could just have the same one every day.
Well, yeah. I mean, isn't that pretty much across the country?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Good point.
I think Reform's entire immigration policy platform is what the public have been waiting for 20 years. They're across the detail on each policy and know how to make it happen via legislation and cutting out legal interference, which is the key point to all of this, is to stop the meddling and interference of the civil service, the legal profession, and the other three parties. When Labour and the Lib Dems mention social care, it means we haven't got an argument, but we can't be seen to oppose it. And we will find out if it works, because I think it's quite obvious Reform will be the next government.
It's looking that way, isn't it? Do you think with social care, do you remember when Boris got the big job and he stood on the steps of Number 10 and said, we'll finally sort out social care? And no one sorted it out because it covers so much. We just, often just think of it being an issue that is about assisting people in their older years, but it's much more than that. It's uncontrollable. Nobody knows how they're going to pay for it in 20 years' time. It's just been kicked down the road every step, hasn't it?
Why don't we get old ex-nurses to go into schools and speak to near school-leaving age youngsters and encourage them to sort of maybe volunteer to see how they like it? If Boris's idea that 25-year-old men from Eritrea are going into social care is absolute nonsense.
Is there an appetite change, though, Matt, of what... We were talking about this in the office before the show, of the kind of thing, like, is there the same amount of youngsters, let's call them that, I don't know, 15, 16-year-olds, who want to become a nurse as there were, as a proportion, as there were, in the 70s or the 80s? Or has the appetite for that kind of work just changed?
Of course. Tony Blair convinced everyone in Britain that working in a call centre was better than getting a trade.
Yeah.
That's how dumb Labour are. Now they're proving it again and again and again. And with 1.2 million foreigners on universal credit costing us $1 billion a month,
sure,
there's half of Rachel Reeves's black hole back straight away.
Yeah.
So it's just nonsense, Ian. Basically, corporations run Britain, and they just say, well, we want 100,000 more, and Labour and the Conservatives just say, yes, sir.
Yeah. That seems to be the case, and now they're trying to play catch-up. Reform could... I mean, it's not going to be a straight road, is it, this, for Reform? I mean, assuming they were in power tomorrow and tried to implement this policy, I mean, there's an awful lot to get through.
If they win enough seats, they can push anything through they want as quickly as humanly
No, that's
possible.
true, but getting it done is what I mean. I mean, just the sheer levels of kind of bodies
getting
you would
people
need.
on planes and such. That's my only question is who is going to round up these people? Maybe you could have a volunteer scheme for that.
I think it would be, you know, it's not like you would be asking illegal immigrants to leave. These are people who were legit, but you'd just be saying, look, we've changed the rules, so you're no longer legit. And frankly, the fact that you work as a barista in Beryl's coffee shop in Rill doesn't really qualify you for residency in this country, or welfare for that matter. So it might happen in not a voluntary way, but, you know, you'd get a letter saying you've got a year, you know, to make other arrangements, which will be a bit rough if you've got 3 kids in different schools.
If you've been here since the Boris wave and you've never had a job and you brought all your family over, you're obviously scamming the system.
Well, you'd think
and
so.
There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of those. We know, we see them every day when we go out for lunch or when we walk around city centres.
Yeah.
You don't see British people. They're all at work.
It's interesting. I wonder if this policy, you know, and there's nothing wrong with parties having to redevelop or revisit them. I wonder ultimately if it came to the crunch, Reform will say, OK, it's not going to be retrospective, it's starting from today.
I don't think people would put up with that. At the end of the day, and there are too many people here who shouldn't be here. And there are even people who've gained citizenship who shouldn't be here either.
Yeah.
There are people who are given citizenship. They should be revoking citizenships as well. Yeah. That would be another great popular policy.
There it is. Listen, go on, Matt.
Thank you, Ian.
Listen, thank you very much. Go on very quickly, Matt.
The other two have done it for so long that we almost question anything common sense.
Yes, yeah, we think, well, hang on, that can't be right. We were told that could never be possible. But, I mean, let's hope it can. I mean, Trump calls it, and he did at that press conference last week with Starmer. You know, there's a couple of times he said, look, if you want to do it, do it. Just do it. Don't dilly-dally around with nonsense. Just get it done. Matt in Cheshire, thank you very much indeed. Paul's in Newport. What are you thinking, Paul? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, my friend. How are you doing?
Very well. Yeah, good as gold at this end. What are your thoughts on Nigel Farage and this latest announcement?
Right. I applaud it. I applaud it, because anything at the minute that sort of means that we're not hemorrhaging money, and we are, as a nation, we are hemorrhaging money. Anything that sort of even attempts to stem that, it gets my vote.
Okay.
My worry, Ian, is that if I was one of those guys that, you know, I've been here 5, 6, maybe 10 years, got indefinite leave to stay, brought the family and the friends over, you know, all sort of stuff, I would be saying to them now, knock out kids, bang out babies like there's no tomorrow. Because we all know, right, what happens is every time, you know, all the sort of big old stuff, you can't do it to the back. The babies didn't ask to be. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yeah. Right? And we are a nation of softies.
Yeah.
But my prediction would be that there will be people out there. The minute these things get, and it's not just these announcements. It's all sorts of. They have a consequence, don't they? And then people immediately find a way to make sure you don't get caught by that consequence. I'd put my bottom dollar on it that within the next 4 years of the Labour sort of government, because they won't step down. No government ever steps down because it's too lucrative for them. So these people know they've got 4 years to have as many babies as they can. And what you'll be doing, Nigel will get in, I hope. Nigel will get in and go, right, this is it, we've got to cut our spending. And we're doing this. And they'll go, I've got 5 babies.
I've had one every year, thanks to you, Nigel.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had one a year. You're making my babies suffer.
Well, there will, I mean, there will be, and you know, Nigel Farage did say, look, well, there's a big, you know, we'll look at visas and people will have to renew them, but the ones that, you know, are successful, you'll still have to come back maybe in 5 years and have a look at it again. But that's what I was saying to Matt about the, how easy, or sorry, how difficult this is going to be. It's not going to be easy to get this thing straight through, although on paper, even if people agree with it.
Yeah, I'm sort of hoping. Let's face it, we all know, we all, those of us who've got at least 2 grey cells between our ears, we know that we're in dire straits, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm sort of hoping that what Nigel does is he comes along and he says, look, these are the things we've got to do to get back to an even keel. And it's all the stuff like this. He knows that the minute he does that, he will not get a second term. I think we need a political party to go in, of any, I don't care what colour they are. They've got to go in and say, right, we know we'll never get voted in again, because what we're going to do is going to be so uncomfortable, so unpopular by the people that are riding the system or whatever, that we'll never get voted in. But if we keep tinkering at the edges, we just carry on where we are. Nothing ever happens, and we just get further and further.
And that has been the story, hasn't it, of this country? And that probably worked for a bit. You know, it kind of worked. And then people got a bit more discerning and started to realise, actually, no, this isn't right. There's got to be a better way. And it's our money, after all. Listen, great call. Thank you very much indeed, Paul, for that. Paul in Newport. We'll go back to some more calls in just a few moments. Plus, we're going to be speaking to a former spokesman for the State of Israel. That issue around Keir Starmer acknowledging, recognising the future of a Palestinian state. It was a game-changing moment for this government, or game-changing moment in our times, I should perhaps say. We'll get the reaction from Israel and more in a few moments.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart...
25 to 3. We do live in extraordinary times. Keir Starmer had mentioned, you know, the possibility of acknowledging Palestine as a state. Well, on Sunday, he sort of did do that. Hamas has declared it a victory, which tells you everything you need to know. Keir Starmer was accused of handing a prize of terrorism by recognising a future Palestinian state. The Prime Minister said the UK would officially support the creation of a Palestinian state to revive the hopes of peace in the Middle East. Let's have a listen to what he said.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
Well, the former Foreign Secretary David Lammy said recognition alone won't ease the humanitarian crisis in Gaza or help free hostages without a broader ceasefire deal. Here's what he said.
That any decision to recognise a Palestinian state, if that were to take place later on today, does not make a Palestinian state happen overnight. That has to be part of a peace process. It has to be based on 1967 borders. It has to be placed on a shared capital in Jerusalem. That will be for final status discussion. But it is to keep that process alive, a process that the United Kingdom has committed to over successive governments. So that is the decision. It is not to say, as night follows day, you recognise one day and a Palestinian state appears the next.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of understand that, Mr. Lammy, but even so, I mean, the kind of timing of this, Jewish New Year, etc. One would also thought maybe there would have been some reference to hostages in Keir Starmer's statement. Nothing at all on that. What is going on? Let's speak with former Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy. Elon, good afternoon to you. I mean,
Hi, Ian.
For what it's worth, I'm sure you're aware of this, there's a lot of people in deep shock in this country that our government have gone there. But what do you make of it? As a former government spokesman, as an Israeli, as a Jew, what is your response to this?
Well, I'll answer you as a British expat. Today, the Palestinians raised their flag outside their new embassy in London, but the British flag should be flying at half-mast all the way down Whitehall, and that's because the British government has brought shame and dishonour on the country. Hamas is praising this decision as a victory. You understand what that means? The terrorist jihadi organisation that launched this war is welcoming the British government's decision and says it's a victory. And it can't say it wasn't warned because they already said that recognition is one of the fruits of the October 7th massacre. This is rewarding them for their decision to launch this war. It's vindicating their decision to launch this war. It's encouraging them to keep holding on to those hostages, and it is encouraging it to perpetrate more barbaric atrocities. This isn't going to bring peace closer, and we all want peace. It's sabotaged any hope of a ceasefire that will see Hamas free the hostages and lay down arms, and it's pushed away the hope of peace. Because what reason does Hamas have to free the hostages now and to lay down its arms when Keir Starmer has just given it a reward for waging this war and is making it even more popular?
I'm guessing, Elon, I don't know what the heck goes on in the mind of Keir Starmer. Frankly, I never have done on anything, but that's a whole other story. But on this specific area, he would say, look, this is about the future. We're not recognising it now, so nobody need panic. We're not acknowledging Hamas as legit. We're simply saying that going forward, if things can be settled, two-state solution, whatever, then we will recognise it. How does that wash with you at all?
But that isn't what Keir Starmer has said. Britain has now officially recognised a state of Palestine, even though David Lammy said it doesn't exist. They've recognised a state they want to bring into existence, which maybe should as a result of peace talks, but it doesn't exist. What this does is vindicate Hamas's decision to launch this war. It won't save Labour at the polls, it won't do anything for Keir Starmer at the polls, but it will give Hamas a big poll boost, because it will mean that the decision to launch this brutal war and hold hostages will have been vindicated. And so it's only sabotaging any hope of a ceasefire. And I think it's shameful. You know, I remember just a few days after Hamas invaded and massacred Israeli families in their homes, the British Parliament lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag. And it was an incredibly moving statement of solidarity when Britain understood that the jihadi psychopaths who launched this war had to be removed from power and the hostages had to come home. And it's really shameful to see Britain folding now, whether under domestic political pressure or trying to scrape a few more votes off the bottom of a barrel, and trying to force Israel to end the war with Hamas still in power and the hostages still trapped in Gaza. By the way, the hostages' families wrote to Keir Starmer just before the recognition. They said, please don't do this. You're going to seriously complicate the ransom talks to get them out. And he clearly threw that piece of paper in the bin.
Even if he'd said, look, if all the hostages are released, we might consider X, Y, and Z. I'm not suggesting that would have necessarily been a good thing either, but had he said that, there were an obvious caveat of consideration and the urgency around this, you know, we would be sitting here perhaps having a different conversation, but there was no reference to hostages.
Even worse, Keir Starmer mentioned the hostages in his speech, but he suggested this was somehow going to help get them out. The opposite. This dooms the hostages inside Gaza. I mean, the British government told Hamas to keep the hostages there. When Keir Starmer gave his ultimatum to Israel, he said, if you don't end the war by September, we're going to recognize Palestine. Well, how is Israel meant to end the war when Hamas is still shooting rockets from Gaza? How is it meant to end the war when Hamas is still holding on to hostages? So Hamas heard that, sat back in the tunnels, rubbing its hands, saying, all we have to do is hold the hostages till September and Britain will give us a prize. And here it is.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I look at this decision and you scratch your head and you wonder what the thought process is. Was it just political? Mr. Starmer and others will say, well, there's 120, 30, 40, whatever it is, other countries that have taken this decision. What marks this out as any different? What is your reaction to the wider community on this, Elon, who have clearly reached a similar decision as Starmer?
Look, Britain has a degree of serious moral authority, and that's because Britain is an Israeli ally. It's not like Ireland. No one here really cares what the Irish have to say because they've been implacably hostile since forever. But Britain is an Israeli ally. And when this war began, Britain stood by Israel's side and said, we back you. You have to bring down Hamas and you have to bring back the hostages. Unfortunately, we've seen a vicious information war being waged against Israel, accusing it of everything under the sun. Famine, starvation, genocide, literally everything, all to try to force it to end this war with Hamas still in power. And it's disheartening, therefore, to see Britain, which had held firm until now, succumb to that misinformation, succumb to that pressure, succumb, frankly, to the desire to win more of the Muslim vote in the UK when it sees that most of the political map's been coloured turquoise for the next election, and throw an ally under a bus. And the crazy thing is this sabotages not just Israel's security, it sabotages Britain's national interests as well. Because if Britain wants to bring peace to the Middle East, if it wants a ceasefire, it's just given Hamas every reason to dig in its heels and keep fighting. This pressure on Israel to end the war is only encouraging Hamas to prolong the war. And that is why Hamas is welcoming this as a victory. So it's a dark day of shame for British foreign policy.
Very strong stuff. Thank you very much, though, for brilliantly articulating the kind of anger around this decision. Elon Levy is a former Israeli government spokesman. Let's get a word from Heidi Bakram. Heidi is a relative of Sashi Aiden, a 50-year-old man taken hostage by Hamas from his home. We know that during this, his eldest child, Mayan, was shot dead in this attack as well. Heidi, you really have a very close connection. I mean, I think all Israelis, all Jews and many other people in the wider world have, a huge sympathy and understanding of the devastation that happened in October. You are particularly close to this. So I would imagine that makes the announcement by the UK Prime Minister yesterday perhaps all the more uncomfortable, annoying, angering, distasteful, whichever one you want to pick. Good afternoon to you.
Yeah, I mean, we found it deeply distressing. It's been a nightmare for the past 2 years, and it just seems to get worse and worse. And our government has just added to all that trauma and all that anxiety. And the hostage families begged, pleaded with Keir Starmer not to go ahead with this plan. And there was even a massive rally a few months when they initially announced it. And he just has not listened to us at all. And in fact, you showed a footage of Tal Shoham, one of the hostages who was released in February, and he was being held with Eviatar David, who was the hostage who we saw those horrific images of digging his own grave and looking like a Holocaust victim, actually. And he was alone with them in the tunnels with him and his best friend, Guy Gilboa Dalal. And they have been purposely starved by Hamas.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is a prize for that. And not just a prize, but an encouragement to keep those hostages still and keep torturing them. And this just feels like a horrific betrayal.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because every now and again, you will know this, a politician or a leader makes a decision and you think, well, I don't agree with it, but I can see what they were trying to do. With this, I genuinely other than, and I don't think it's over cynical to look at this as a way of electioneering in some kind of way and appeasing some backbenchers, I cannot quite seriously find any kind of logic behind this decision, Heidi.
Yeah, I mean, we asked for clarification when this was announced because it just seemed like an insane, perverse incentive to keep the conflict going, because it gave no conditions to Hamas and no push to them to release the hostages and end the war. So we just didn't understand it at all. And every time they did a clarification, it just made it more confusing, because actually it's based on a completely illogical approach to this conflict. So I don't actually understand at all why this is happening. And it seems to have been precipitated by France and Macron, who was the first to announce this. Yeah. And when he announced it, it was right in the middle of a ceasefire negotiation that was actually progressing quite well. And the day that Macron announced that, Hamas pulled out of the negotiations and made really extreme demands that meant that the whole thing was sabotaged. So we're seeing an actual practical effect from these announcements and this policy upon the actual practical release of the hostages.
And of course, Mr. Starmer announcing this just, a matter of hours really before Jewish New Year, which, again, the timing could not be more insensitive, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think he announced it a day early because of that sensitivity, but I mean, it's
still pretty close, isn't it?
Very tokenistic to do that. Yeah. And today they did their usual greetings of New Year that they do for all faiths. Yeah. But they did it for Jewish New Year, and the response was not good, as you can imagine.
Indeed. Heidi, listen, I know you'll keep on campaigning. Thank you for your time, though. Heidi Backram, who knows from her own experience within her own family what this all feels like. A relative, a hostage, the eldest child of that hostage killed. This is miserable, it's grim. And we're talking about terrorists here, by the way. We're not talking about a kind of an equivalence. Oh, well, the other side, they did this. And, this is absolute extremism and terrorism all rolled into one. This is an ideology you can't fight, you can't negotiate with. But Keir Starmer kind of thinks he can. The only thing I can think of that's in it for him is a few votes and support from his own backbenchers who are getting absolutely fed up with the man. 0344 499 1000.
what possibly has spooked him completely into this precipitate action was Emmanuel Macron, the French president, saying that he was going to do this. And I think that probably Sir Keir Starmer thought, well, I'm going to be left, looking even more weak or I'm going to be in an even weaker position in terms of these people who want my head if I don't go along with this. Plus, I'm afraid to say, I think that Starmer himself, he's obsessed by what he calls the two-state solution.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just before we go back to your calls, and there is a lot to get through here this afternoon, let's do the voice of doom. This is the mystery voice. Well, it's political mystery voice. You're looking for a politician, past or present, could be way back, could be recent, whatever. I think it's day 5 or 6, is it, of this one, I sense at the moment. It's gone on for day 6. So have a listen to the voice, and can you tell us who this is?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
I think it's tricky. I say it every time, but I think it's tricky. Here it is again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Don't phone us, but you can message if you fancy taking part, because there ain't no prize. 87222, 87222. If we get a right answer, we will tell you after the news who it is. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. Here it is again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
And again.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
It's a stinker, but if you know who it is, 87222. Back to your calls. This will be Daniel in Jerusalem. Daniel, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I'll be honest, I haven't been listening so much because I've been very busy, but I've got two complete. I want to say something very quickly on the Palestinians front. Which state of Palestine are they recognising? The one they were offered and rejected in 1937, ditto in 47, 1967, 2000 and 2008. Which state, which was rejected by the Palestinians, is being recognised now?
That's a good point, and I reckon if you asked half the front bench, they wouldn't know the answer to that.
And also concerning that, if East Jerusalem is recognised as the capital of the potential Palestinian state, why is Israel not recognised as the power in West Jerusalem? But that's not why I was phoning.
Okay.
I was phoning actually about the Nigel Farage removing what's it called, right of abode or indefinite leave to remain. As you said before, the devil is in the details.
Of course.
For instance, I can think of two things since 1923. I think the Common Travel Area has allowed the Irish to get automatic right to remain in the UK and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be rescinded? And
good point.
Also, what about people who would otherwise take out citizenship, but for whatever reason, like they're afraid of losing their current citizenship?
Yeah.
In other words, they're not trying to freeload. They'd be quite willing to become citizens, but.
What do you sense? Do you think? If Reform UK, of course, got into power, they would presumably start to put this into action. All policies are announced with a bit of a flash and a flare, of course, and then they're somewhat watered down. Do you sense that might well be the case here?
Of course. As you said, it's bombastic statements are easy to make. That you then there's a difference between theory and practice.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to say things when you're in opposition.
Yeah. It is.
Wait till you govern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't blame opposition parties. It is their job to start the conversation and talk about direction of travel and a note of intent. That's what they've done, and Reform have done it, love them or hate them. They've done it more and more efficiently than any other party, not just at the moment, but any party previous to that in terms of setting out a stall. Listen, thank you very much indeed for that, Daniel in Jerusalem. Alexis is in Stratford-upon-Avon. Alexis, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hello, Ian. Yes, I think with reform, as well as changing the status to do with immigration, at the same time they need to address the problems caused by Tony Blair back in the 2000s, when he changed the entry requirements for training to be things such as a police officer or a nurse to have a degree. I think that denied the opportunity for a lot of really good young people to go into those careers. I know some people like that. I think they need to be allowed to work from a lower level in the old system. And yeah, I think that would just be a big improvement. And also the BMA, the reason we have a shortage of doctors historically is because the BMA prevented people from being allowed to be trained. So they need to remove all of those kind of things as well.
Do you think, I mean, the intention might be sound, but of course you haven't got to know much about either the Department of Work and Pensions or politics or the Home Office to know that this sounds like the kind of policy that could take, decades.
Yes, I think it could take a long time. I think we've got to be patient. But as long as they're going in the right direction, I think people will support them. I hope that everybody doesn't get frustrated when it doesn't all happen in the first 6 months, because that's not possible. But I think as long as they're on the right course and people see that.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's that refreshing sense of someone thinking in a different kind of way rather than just sticking with the status quo and going, we can't do anything. Maybe you can. Alexis, thank you very much indeed for that. Andy in Cheshire says, I'll tell you what is at the roots of this ridiculous decision to recognise Palestine. It comes from Starmer's weak negotiating skills and desperation to get an agreement over immigration from France. Macron would have said, recognise Palestine with me and I'll give you the basis of a deal to deport migrants. And Starmer took it. It's funny, isn't it? Because that would have sounded a bit like a conspiracy theory a few years ago. But in the absence of any other logical explanation, plus that bizarre and curious relationship that Keir Starmer has with Emmanuel Macron, is he Macron's only friend anywhere on the planet, in or out of politics? That sounds about bang on. Andy, thank you very much indeed for that. Joanna in Salisbury, without all the usual thoughts, Keir Starmer's wife, a practising Jew, must be a social pariah at the local synagogue. We were talking about that. How practising can you be if you marry a non-Jew? I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe the two go hand in hand. Who knows? We'll have more from you in a few moments' time. 0344 499 1000. Here's the voice of doom.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
If you think you know who that is, 87222. Right now, 3 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines here on Talk.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their
their boots. Now Keir Starmer is on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You
It's
just can't
crap.
say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome back to the programme. Welcome back to the home of common sense. Last night, Donald Trump, the American president, hailed Charlie Kirk as a giant of his generation and said America is a nation in shock and mourning, while Vice President J.D. Vance said that Mr. Kirk changed the course of history. Well, look at that. Memorial, incredibly powerful speeches happening in the States last night. Also this afternoon, it's been revealed that in 2011, Sarah Ferguson, as in Fergie, emailed Jeffrey Epstein, referring to him as a steadfast friend, despite previously denying any contact. She's now getting dropped like a hot brick from charities and the like. And the Lib Dems have urged parents to limit children's doom scrolling to 2 hours. The party said a doom scrolling cap is needed to tackle addictive social media platforms. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Before we go any further, should we do the voice of doom, the mystery voice with a political edge to it? Here was the voice we've been playing you. In fact, playing this for the last 6 days. Here it is.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Who's that then? Some of the guesses so far. Ed Miliband. No. Danny Alexander. It is not. Philip Hammond. No. Liam Fox. No. Matthew Paris. No. No correct answer, which means it rolls over day 7. The voice of doom back tomorrow on the programme. Now, last night, President Donald Trump hailed Charlie Kirk as a giant of his generation and said America is a nation in shock and mourning. Let's have a listen to what the American president said at the Charlie Kirk Memorial.
He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent. Charlie's angry. Look at that. He's angry at me now.
Donald Trump. Meanwhile, wife of Charlie, Erica Kirk, broke down at the memorial last night, and she says she forgives his killer.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life. On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Well, I don't think many people could go there. In other news, it's been revealed that in 2011, Sarah Ferguson emailed Jeffrey Epstein referring to him as a steadfast friend, despite previously denying any kind of contact. The email included an apology for associating Epstein with paedophilia after he threatened legal action against her. Ferguson later admitted the email was a gigantic error of judgment and promised never to have any further connection with Epstein. Let's talk about this with The Sun US editor Scarlett Howes back with us. Scarlett, afternoon to you.
Hello, afternoon.
Always nice to have you with us. I mean, back to the Charlie Kirk. Yeah, well, the Charlie Kirk Memorial. I mean, this was incredible stuff. If you sort of try and give it a context, really, because, you know, up till quite recently, I think certainly most Brits wouldn't really have been that familiar with Charlie Kirk. In fact, quite a lot of Americans weren't necessarily familiar, although more so because his work went into campaigning and certainly campaigning for Mr. Trump. But very few people, you know, whether you call them activists, campaigners or speakers, would command the kind of guest list at a memorial as he's just done. I mean, this is incredible. Most of the American administration, VIPs all over the place, including Elon Musk. This was extraordinary.
I know exactly my thoughts on that as well. I mean, I found it absolutely extraordinary. The atmosphere yesterday was, as I wrote a piece today for the newspaper that said, you know, the only thing I can kind of really compare it to was when the Queen died for us Brits. I mean, it felt the same, similar on the same kind of level of, you know, there was thousands of people. I think it was over 100,000 people who turned up. And, you know, the people that I spoke to, they all had something to say about Charlie and how he had affected their life. And yes, you know, this is a person that perhaps was not as well known in Britain at the time and to lots of Americans as well. But now, as one woman put it quite aptly, that you know, now after his death, he's even louder than he was before his death. So, yeah, it was quite extraordinary to see you know, what the scale that this memorial was on. You know, even in the, you know, the extent, I think it was compared to, you know, the security levels compared to the Super Bowl. You know, we had of course VIPs there, Donald Trump, Elon Musk. I mean, yeah, it was quite extraordinary to see that and just see the amount of love for him as well, and how people really felt touched by his words, you know, and how that he had affected their life. Yeah. You know, I had many personal stories about how he had personally helped them through their lives. So yes, it was
it was almost bizarre. I don't say that critically. It was just like, you know, I don't think I've ever really seen anything like it for someone who was essentially a political campaigner, albeit a very effective one, and, you know, a nice bloke as well. It was interesting that, I suppose, perhaps in keeping with her Christian faith, his wife was full of forgiveness. And you know, I never know when I hear somebody say that, and you look at the manner in which this man died, you know, and two small kids and his wife and all that goes with it. You know, I think most of us are forced to kind of ask that question, could I forgive someone who'd done that to my partner or my relative? And the answer is almost exclusively no. But she went there, and I guess, you know, many would say, well, that was that would have been a Charlie Kirk kind of element to his belief system. He would have probably forgiven someone as well.
Oh yes, completely. And I think that all of those people, those, you know, tens of thousands of people in that stadium, if you spoke to them, they probably would say they would forgive as well, because, you know, this is something that they really believe in. You know, these are their morals, their values. You know, they're very Christian. They believe in forgiveness, and I think that, you know, this was something that everybody could connect with in the stadium, because they all had the same ideas, and they all listened to what Charlie Kirk had said to them previously, and they actually connected with it. So so I felt like they were very connected with what she was saying, and they were very much on the same wavelength as her. And you did believe that she really meant it as well. It wasn't just something she said to get headlines or a speech. You know, you could feel that she actually really meant it, especially when she broke down in tears. And everybody was very emotional in that stadium, because beforehand, you know, it was quite political. Everybody was, you know, chanting USA. It was quite jovial, the atmosphere in a way. And then as soon as she came on stage, I think, you know, there was complete silence descended upon the stadium, and, you know, the atmosphere completely changed, and everybody was incredibly emotional, because you really felt that she, you know, personally was, you know, speaking from the heart about, you know, the way that she lost her husband and the situation.
It was also an interesting opportunity for Donald Trump to re-meet his former mate and then sort of slight enemy, and now perhaps even mate again, Elon Musk.
Yes, well, I don't believe personally that they didn't know they were going to sit next to each other.
No way.
I don't think the president of the United States would not know who he's going to sit next to. So I think they knew they were going to sit next to each other. I think they took this opportunity as a way to publicly say that they are now friends again. That they have, that their fallout is over, and that was the kind of handshake. They knew that handshake was going to be caught on camera, I'm sure, and they did that as a way to say, "Look, we're friends again. We're over this silly fallout. This Twitter spat they had, and yeah, so they seem to be reunited now."
Reunited indeed. I wonder whether that moves to anything firmer than just a handshake. Will Musk be back there in the Oval Office whizzing around in his Tesla on the White House lawn before proclaiming he's going to save another £1 trillion? I don't know what he's going to do next. Who knows? But it was nonetheless interesting. And another interesting story that was only really broken in the last couple of hours is that of the Duchess of York, who's been removed as a patron of a children's charity in the wake of an email emerging in which she called sex offender Jeffrey Epstein her supreme friend. Now, she has a kind of a reason for this. She said she was trying to ward off essentially having a lawsuit against her. She was going to be sued because of what she'd said about him, and so therefore she almost cozied up to him. "Oh, no, you're a nice bloke, and you're the best, and all the rest of it." That was her defence, but it counts really for nothing when you've publicly been seen endorsing somebody, over-endorsing them almost, who you already knew was a sex offender at that point against children.
Yeah, so this comes after she knew that he was a sex offender. She then borrowed £15,000 off him, which was given to her aid over this, to settle some debts. And this interview that she took in 2011 to the Evening Standard was to say, "Look, I'm really sorry that I did that. I condemn his actions. I bought pedophilia, etc. And I won't have any contact with him again." And then now we find out that actually only a month later, which is quite, important that it was only a month after that, she then emailed him from a personal email account to say, "I'm really sorry, I wasn't connecting you with paedophilia, you're my supreme friend, etc." But now, she's saying that he was, he exerted a lot of influence over their lives. He was, incredibly evil man, and that he was able to get her to write that because he was threatening to sue her with legal action, and he was he was sending her quite nasty threats, and she just wanted all this to go away. So that's what she says. But I think it's difficult for us to look at that and see that she actually did do that, considering that he was already convicted of a child sex crime.
And it's difficult, isn't it? Because if you're a charity and you have patrons and various kind of high-profile people and royalty or former royalty that are part and parcel of your organisation, whatever excuse Sarah Ferguson might have, you've got to ditch them, haven't you? At that point, I mean, you can't have someone who's got proven and published dialogue with a child sex offender being the patron of a children's hospice.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, children's charity. You can't. It's like, if you were, representing, any other charity, and you had done something, you had, I don't know, another charity, and there was somebody else that was convicted of a crime, and you were patron of that charity, and you had emailed them, etc. They would have to drop you. So I can understand why they have chosen to do this, because they want to distance themselves from that.
Of course.
Definitely.
Of course. Listen, Scarlett, great to have you on again. We'll speak again very soon. Scarlett House, The Sun US editor, with us on the programme. Thank you to her. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Don says, "The love of money has been Andrew and Sarah's downfall. Epstein had shed loads and attracted loads of money. Lovers, including well-known politicians. Inevitable, really," says Don. Yeah, it was that. People love to get into that kind of sphere. And Epstein, prior to what people knew about him, he would have been one of those guys that people, I would imagine, those closest to him, probably thought, they knew, that he liked a young girl. They might not have known he liked a child, but they certainly knew he liked a young girl. They knew his lifestyle bought him a party, his money bought him a partying lifestyle. And as Don says, you know, the attraction to that, being flown around to different places. Oh, don't worry, come to my castle in Italy, because that's where the next party is. Oh, right, once again, it's not going to cost you anything. We'll fly you there. How long have I got? You'll be there for a month. You'll be waited on hand and foot. Oh, and you'll get to meet a few presidents and former you know, all of that. It's a flipping aphrodisiac to these people. Back to your calls. This will be Maria in Basingstoke. What have you got for us, Maria? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I'd just like to make a couple of points, if I could. Firstly, I've heard a lot recently about people on universal benefits and how many people there are on it and how much money they're getting.
Yep.
The reason that the numbers have gone up so much is because that they're phasing out all the other benefits and forcing everybody onto universal credit.
Okay.
Now, if you get the basic universal credit, which I do because I'm retired and disabled, you're on less than £12,000 a year.
Sure.
Which sounds a lot when you think someone like me, £12,000 a year. But then you take into account the fact that my rent is $8,400 a year. My council tax is nearly $3,000 a year.
Wow.
You know, it adds up.
Of course it does.
My second point is, I've heard today about Nigel Farage and his plans to deport everybody. Could somebody ask him to please promise that the first group of people that he deports are Keir Starmer and his group of little useless lunatic hanger-ons and all his little chums who are human rights lawyers who are destroying this country?
I mean, if everyone had their own wish list of who you'd like to deport, then I think that lot would be on the top, wouldn't it, at the moment?
Yeah. But my chief concern with him at the moment is, where on earth does he get off meddling in Palestine and Israel's business? He's got his own country to run. Why can't he just concentrate on running this country and doing a damn sight better job of it instead of meddling and trying to make himself look like some grand statesman? Because at the end of the day, we all know all he really wants is the MEP job in Brussels. He wants the world to think he's some grand statesman, and he's a piffling little idiot.
Well, I think he wants more than MEP. I think he wants president, doesn't he, of the whole thing?
I think if he could take King Charles's job, he'd be first in line.
I think he's put in an application form, from what I'm hearing.
Oh, I suspect he's put in more than an application form.
Yeah, well, he knows a couple of footmen, apparently, who can have a word in the shell-like, so we'll watch with interest.
Well, he's actually probably written out Charles's resignation.
Well, it would be Downing Street that would write it, so maybe he's got that in his bottom drawer. Maria, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. More calls from you on the way. This is Talk.
looking even more weak or I'm going to be in an even weaker position in terms of these people who want my head if I don't go along with this. Plus, I'm afraid to say, I think that Starmer himself, he's obsessed by what he calls the two-state solution.
The other thing that's absolutely extraordinary about this is that everybody who's there talks. I mean, there's awful things happening in that war. I don't want to deny that. But this won't make one iota of difference to one Palestinian child or individual or so on. It strengthens Hamas's control over the region because they can claim this as a victory internally. So for the ordinary Palestinians, it doesn't do anything either. What good does it do?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, and there's a lot more still to get through, even though we haven't at the end of the show yet. Jeremy Carr's going to be here at 4 o'clock, of course, with Drive. Now, NATO, NATO. So apparently they've said that the term airman is offensive and should be replaced with the gender-neutral Air Force personnel. This is the Alliance's new language guide aiming to tackle unconscious bias, warning that gendered terms are outdated and may alienate women and minorities. According to The Telegraph, words like serviceman, guardsman and my guys are being replaced with serviceman, service member, guard and team. Let's speak with Andrew Fox, a defence expert, former major in the parachute regiment as well. Afternoon to you, Andrew. I expected to find you weeping as I was just reading that list out again of stuff you're not allowed to say. Look, we all want to welcome people from all sorts of backgrounds. I'm sure in your military career you worked alongside people from all over the place in different ways. But nonetheless, it does make you stand up and your jaw drop when you hear someone saying, no, we've got to get rid of the term airman because it might be offensive.
Well, I'm sad to say I'm fully immersed in this, having been a Ministry of Defence civil servant for 2 years after my time in the Army. And this is unfortunately already riddled within the British Ministry of Defence. We have already got rid of airmen from the Royal Air Force. Aviator is the preferred term, even though a lot of those people are ground crew and therefore by definition not aviators.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new, unfortunately, and really it does show a quite terrifying lack of priority when you have Russia probing NATO's eastern borders and our troops potentially being put into harm's way. Frankly, we have bigger things to worry about than pronouns.
Yeah, I think we sent a couple of jets over to Poland, didn't we, in the last 48 hours? I doubt that before anyone jumped in them, there was a debate about the terminology used in order to appoint the pilot and assistants and all the rest of it. I mean, it beggars belief, really, doesn't it, Andrew, in the sense that you can only imagine Putin listening to these kind of conversations and thinking, that either the West in general, I mean, he obviously doesn't rate the West very much by definition, certainly doesn't rate us very much, but this would just be a huge joke. It makes us look like a bit of a laughingstock.
It does, and it's incredibly infantilizing to think that you couldn't do your job just because it has the word man in the title. Yeah. I know officers in both the Guards and the Rifles regiments who have female soldiers who are known as riflemen or guardsmen, and they're incredibly proud to wear those long-standing and storied ranks that have been covered in glory throughout the British Army's hundreds of years of history, and the idea that this should bend to political whims is very silly and trivial.
Well, I was going to ask you, on that point, because many people might say, well, what's wrong with airmen? But there might be some women who go, well, because I'm not a man, so can we not have airwoman or something else? Is that view out there, or is your experience that actually mostly airman has become such an ingrained term that whether you're male or female, you kind of take it, and no bloke is claiming some sort of status because it's got the word man in the title?
Well, quite. And actually, I think if they did go for airwoman or guardswoman, I wouldn't really have an issue, because that would just be flexing to the person who was holding the job title. But to blanketly remove everything strikes me as a particularly, there's just no need for it, quite frankly.
I would imagine as well, I don't know what the percentages are in terms of male to female, the ratio of, people who literally pilot fighter jets and the like, but I would take a guess that it's still hugely male dominated. So to lose the title to appease some kind of odd, bizarre, progressive diktat from some nameless bod that wouldn't know one end of a rifle from another, let alone an aircraft, then does seem a little bit bizarre.
Well, of course, anyone actually flying the aircraft wouldn't be an airman anyway, because they would be flight lieutenants and squadron leaders and wing commanders.
Good point.
So those ranks don't even apply to pilots. Airmen in the Royal Air Force certainly used to be the lowest rank in the command structure. But look, we don't have enough soldiers in the British Army. We don't have enough jets in the Royal Air Force. We don't have enough ships in the Royal Navy, and nor do we have enough ammunition across the board to take those three arms of the services into a fight. We have far bigger problems to worry about than what somebody is called.
And I'm bound to also get your view on this, Andrew, while you are with us, as a man, hugely respected and incredible military career that you had. On the recent story in the last 24 hours or so, Keir Starmer recognising Palestine as a state, that's going to be his direction of travel. Hamas, in turn, have declared victory after this happened, which I can't believe the British government, or at least one person in either the MOD or just in Number 10 would have said to Starmer, the minute you say that, they're going to release a press statement saying this. You might think on that basis alone you'd kind of swerve it and wouldn't go there. Mr. Starmer has gone there, and this is the consequence. An international known terrorist organisation is celebrating, thanks to us.
Yeah, and there was absolutely no need to do this. It doesn't achieve anything on the ground. It doesn't bring the war in Gaza to an end. It doesn't make life any better for Palestinians or Israelis. All it really does is remove one of the key levers of negotiation that we had with the Palestinians, to say you need to start behaving, and if you do, you get your state. Instead, we've said all you need to do now is escalate violence, provoke a response from Israel, and then we'll just give you whatever you want. And so Hamas, quite rightly, from their perspective, would have been cheering last night. And now, of course, they also get to sue us for reparations for 1948 as well. So it's a lose-lose-lose situation.
I was going to say, on that basis alone, you might have thought they'd have left it alone. But, I mean, who knows where this one will go. And can I just ask you this, Andrew, while you're on? We were talking earlier about appetites for careers. And how it's changed among young people. You know, there would have been a time when somebody at school might have said, yeah, I fancy becoming a nurse. And I can remember going down the Army Recruitment Centre and checking out, getting the leaflets for it. My friend wanted to be in the RAF, and he achieved that. But the swine became a Red Arrow pilot as well, so he never had a trouble on a night out in a bar, but that's a whole other story. But the bottom line is that there is a sense that when it comes to young people joining the military, it doesn't have quite the same attraction that it used to have. What would you say to young people who've maybe thought about it and then again thought maybe not? Well, is there still an attraction to this incredibly important and very proud job?
Well, I think the armed forces just need to sell themselves better. You know, I had 16 years of phenomenal experiences. I got to go to Afghanistan 3 times. I got to skydive out of Black Hawk helicopters over the Middle East. I got to fly the Atlantic in C-17 aircrafts. You know, it was a remarkable career that took me to every continent in the world, bar South America. And I had the privilege of working with British soldiers who are simply the best of us. And they were an honour and a privilege to lead. The finest part of it was seeing people join, as kind of the raw clay, and seeing them turn into people who were living these incredible careers and lives and really giving something to the country that frankly you can't put a price on.
Yeah, indeed, spot on. Great to hear that from you as well. Andrew, thank you, sir, for being on with us. Defence expert, former major in the Parachute Regiment, 16 years. Jumping out. You wouldn't get me in the helicopter in the first place, let alone jump out the flipping thing. But thank God for people like Andrew, because you need people like that. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Just gone 3:30. Hayley says, just wanted to say, I'm pretty sure it's not just me, but our Prime Minister is speaking for himself and not the UK when he says he's supporting Palestine. Please make him stop. How on earth did he get to be our leader? Well, he's kind of part of a sort of a contingent of sort of Western groupthink bods. And I don't think he would deny that, by the way. You know, the kind of Justin Trudeau, although he's not there anymore, but Mark Carney is pretty much the same deal. Emmanuel Macron, Jacinda Ardern, remember her in New Zealand. They're kind of the power play of the groupthink. And they all kind of reassure each other in their sort of mutual loving for the same vacuous causes and things. That's kind of how I see it. And, you know, it's everything, by the way, that I think is wrong with politics, not just in this country, but elsewhere as well. Now, the Lib Dems have urged parents to limit children's doom scrolling to 2 hours. They're also calling for health warnings on social media apps for under 18s, highlighting risks such as anxiety, depression and also sleep problems. The party said a doom scrolling cap is needed to tackle addictive social platforms, citing research showing that 4 in 5 parents reported negative behaviours in their children due to excessive phone use. Well, as a father of 2 kids, I know exactly how this thing pans out. Let's speak to Gráinne Hallahan, who's a former teacher and head of community at Teacher Tap. Good afternoon to you, Gráinne.
Hello, good afternoon.
I mean, this one keeps coming up, doesn't it? You know, we're going to deal with it and, you know, we've got to limit it, stop it, ban it, give more education. It is a nightmare for a parent. I speak literally from first-hand experience. There's not a day goes past when we don't have this conversation. So I get it and I understand it. And frankly, if you said to me, what would you do? I would burn all the iPads in the world in a massive bonfire, along with all the phones and along with my sanity. So that's my fatherly take on it. And I'm not alone, am I?
No, you're certainly not. You know, I'm a mum of 3 as well. We have this conversation a lot in our house.
Yep.
Some really interesting conversations, actually. So, you know, we set screen time limits on the phones. This is something that a lot of parents will feel like, well, I make this decision for my child. I put the screen time limits on. But I know from my own daughter, she among her friends, they compared their screen time stats and they could see that she had hardly any screen time. They said, you know, are you not... You can get past that, you know. And she said, go on, try. And she handed her phone over and they were like, what's the pin?
I don't know.
I don't know the pin. That's why it is what it is.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, no. Then yeah, you're stuck with that. And there's an element of parents do have to take control of this themselves. We know from asking teachers on Teacher Tap that overwhelmingly teachers want to see more restrictions on under 18 social media use, and that they're reporting, we've been asking this again and again over years and years, and can see this rising concern about certain influences from social media upon the behaviour of students. We also asked, we just picked a random week in July and said, you know, in the last 2 weeks, have you had to comfort a child after they've seen a distressing image on social media? 1 in 10. 1 in 10, just a random week in the summer. You know, these have real world consequences on our children and lifelong. Like, this isn't just, you know, oh, it's a bit distressing, it's a bit upsetting. The things that they can see and the reports that I hear from senior leaders who have to take phones sometimes and go into chats and check things that are happening and to safeguard pupils, seeing obscenely distressing things on young students' phones, and good students you wouldn't expect to have, you know, these this isn't oh, this is happening to someone else's child.
Correct.
This is in your home for your children. So will these changes make a difference? I really hope so, but I think it takes an effort from the tech companies and from parents and education on how to implement these rules and these restrictions before we actually see any change.
It's interesting, isn't it? My little boy has just started secondary school, and about a week ago, the day after Charlie Kirk was shot, you probably know where I'm going with this, we got a letter, an email from the school explaining. This was, obviously, I was new to this territory in terms of literally getting a letter from a head teacher saying, look, there's a video going around. Obviously, it's created out of school, but then kids bring it into school. They show each other in the playground. And I thought, isn't it? My little boy's 11, and there's people walking around with that on the phone, and it is one of the most graphic, horrendous things somebody would want to look at, along with thousands of other similar images. And I thought, what a strange world we've arrived in when a head teacher is sending me an email to remind me about the safety and the issues around an assassination video. You know, he went there to do maths, English, and a bit of PE, and here we are having a debate on watching death. It's extraordinary. And when the Lib Dems came out of this, the bit I was I was surprised with, Grania, was they were talking about a 2-hour limit. I thought that was a lot.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that, because I also thought
I'd read it wrong. I thought a 2-hour limit, like a 10-minute limit might be something. 2 hours? By the time he gets home from school, that's all the time he has before he goes to bed.
And we're asking children to use their devices to do homework. We're asking them to use their devices to use their school bus passes. Like, we're increasingly making our children like commodities of phones. Like, you know, they are consumers of a mobile phone. That we sell products to them through mobile phones. I think it's really tricky for parents, for schools. Even if you ban phones in schools, we know that they see them on the bus. All of those images you just talked about in that incident of the sharing videos, that doesn't always happen within the confines of a school where you've got an adult to go to if they are distressed. They're out on the bus, they're walking to and from school. It's definitely got to take a whole culture shift away from smartphones and making it easier for parents to not have to give their child a phone, and not insisting that bus passes or homework is done on a phone. It's going to take an effort from everybody to write this. Say, oh, it's too late, you know, the horse has bolted. There are things we can do. They're just a bit drastic, and not everyone's going to like them.
It's interesting, you know, you mentioned at the beginning about phone companies and the like, and social media companies. I still find it unbelievable, because you've probably got the sort of family thing set up on your phone, from what you were saying, same as us, so you can control it. And there are sometimes, you know, little moments with an app that they might be able to see or whatever, and obviously that there's always going to be the peer pressure thing. I find it extraordinary. To set this stuff up can be a little convoluted, and if you're not that tech savvy, it can take a while, you know, where, you know, we've had other parents go, oh, I've tried to set it up and I haven't. You'd think by now, I just downloaded the latest software for my Apple Mac computer, and the same will happen for the new phone and all the rest of it. You'd think there'd just be one toggle, wouldn't you? Just one button that says, make this a dumb phone. You don't have to go through it, just make it a dumb phone. I can give that to my kid and he can go away. All he can do is play a silly little game on it, you know, the usual things. He can make a phone call if he has to. He can message us if he has to. He can't go on WhatsApp, because that's the one that I think is almost as bad as anything, but doesn't get talked about enough, as I'm sure you're aware. But they don't do that. There's no phone you can buy. You can buy dumb phones, as you know, but you can't take your iPhone or your Samsung Galaxy and just press a button.
No, they make you go into every single app, and you've got to set it up separately. Yep. You need to put times in for each one, and if you want them to be able to access, say, for example, I know I've mentioned the bus pass a lot, but you know that comes up a lot when we talk to schools. They can access the bus pass at any time, so that won't be restricted from them.
Yep.
But then also you've got these. Another thing that we've come across from talking to teachers and leaders. Innocuous looking apps, things like, for girls, a period tracker app, which is a very common thing for girls to have on their phones. There's new ones now that have messaging facilities within them. So they have message boards and ability to. Why would you need that on? Why is that there? These are aimed at young girls. They've got cartoons on the images. They're specifically designed for young people. Why do you need to have a messaging facility on there? And as a parent, you might be checking the, you know, WhatsApp. You might be checking their messages, checking their emails. You wouldn't know to check on there.
No, so that's a good point. That's something you'd think would be educational, or under that
category,
like, you know, health and education.
You would not dream that there would be messaging facilities in there. It's only because somebody had, you know, I've heard about it because they found something untoward, and that was where it was hidden. Yeah. But as a parent, you've got to check every single thing that's on their phone. You cannot just assume because it's a health app or it's a game or it's, you know, it's going to be problem free. And that requires a parent who's involved, who's tech savvy, who's clued up on these sorts of things. Unfortunately, not every parent is like that. And then the children who are the most vulnerable are then put at more risk. So, you know, I hear great things from school leaders, inviting parents in, sharing with them videos, them and setting up the controls on their phone. And I think that's what it takes. And I think it also takes parents talking to other parents and saying, look, you know, you might want to know how to do this, but there's a real uneasiness sometimes between parents about feeling judged for their parenting, or these comments are unwelcome. But perhaps we need to move back to a time when it is okay to say to another parent, you know, do you know how to do this? Like, I can show you how to do that if you like, and make it more acceptable, more okay to have these kinds of discussions. It almost feels taboo, and when we talk about phone use in teens among parents of teens, because there's a worry that you're going to be judged or be seen as like not such a good parent because you're letting your child do things on their phone, and you worry about it.
Yeah. The only saving grace at the moment, I have to say, Grania, is that because my little boy's he hasn't got a smartphone yet. They use an iPad at home, and it did mean buying him a Nokia. I don't know if you remember or can recall what an 11-year-old boy's face looks like when you present him with a Nokia. It's almost like you've chopped his arm off or something. It's the least cool thing a parent can ever do, and I savoured every darn moment of it. Does that make me a bad dad?
Brilliant. That's top tier parenting right there.
Absolutely right. Yeah. It's not a bad little phone, but I wouldn't want one myself, but I won't tell him that. Listen, Grania, great to have you on with us. Thank you. Grania Hallahan, who is a former teacher, head of community at Teacher Tap, the app and the organisation that look into all of this. I was surprised the Lib Dems were proposing a 2-hour daily social media limit. I think 2 hours is a long time. That's a long time, because they will take it up. They will do that, and it's not just social media, it's all the there's so many other elements, whether it's YouTube. I mentioned WhatsApp. I was talking to a neighbour who they had to take their daughter off WhatsApp. She was in a group. Can you imagine this? Imagine being a 13, 14-year-old girl in this case. You're in a group that has 400 other kids in it, and disproportionate female. 400 other kids in their year. It was like their year thing at school, or house thing, whatever it was. 400. The kids were waking up in the middle of the night to check their phone in case somebody had said something bad against them. And it just turned into this horrendous sort of platform for bullying. And the school said, well, we can't do anything about it. It's not a school app. It's up to you. There's something in that, I suppose. But how many parents don't bother, don't go there, don't really give a hoot, or not even aware of something? Oh, it's just WhatsApp, it's how they get in touch with us. Well, no, the other connotations of it are actually more sinister than some social media sites. Let's go to Kit in Kent. Kit, how you doing?
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Lovely to speak with you.
And you too. What have you got for us?
I haven't kept up. I was watching you when you were discussing the statehood of
Palestine.
Of the people known as Palestinians.
Yes, yeah.
So
what are your thoughts on that?
That's your other subject.
Hey, no, that's fine. What do you want to say on that point? Because we're still talking about it.
Look, I think first things first, I do not wish to insult anyone, but I wish to point out a fact I've noticed, that Keir Starmer is somewhat illiterate. Right, so... Okay, a state is a structure to form a government. So it's country first. So country, you need to comprehend the English language. I haven't got anything against other languages, because most of our etymology has derived from other languages, okay? Yeah. We have the broadest etymology of any language. We have the largest vocabulary, okay? So I don't wish to offend, upset, or whatever anyone on this matter. Right, and I have looked at other languages, okay? So, right, well, in science, etymology is really important, okay? It's a new word, scientifica. Newton was a philosopher, okay? Right, so let's get back to... So country is derived from count, accountability, and you have counties. Now, the French have pays. Pays is land.
Country, yeah.
Paysan, yeah? So you really need to understand the history of the language, comprehend what you're actually discussing.
Yes.
Right, so accountability, county, so land, areas, and accounting. Counting. And you've got counts. You had counts when you had serfdom,
Sorry?
yeah?
Yes,
right.
counts,
So you
yes.
have country first, okay? Yeah. Then you have nation. So nation comes from naissance, birth, okay?
Yeah.
Which is the same as Genesis. Gen is birth, yeah?
Right.
And genius and engineering, right? To give birth, to create, right? Okay. So you have country first, then nation. You have state is a structure to form a government. To govern. And is mental, mentally capable, a brain. Okay, Parliament is to parley is to speak, to discuss. So it requires freedom of speech. Okay, and a brain.
Okay. So where just out of interest, because I'm sure
so
this is.
Do,
where are we
my
going with this? Yes.
My suggestion is what we could communicate to the people who are known as Palestinians, because Palestine, it comes from the Philistines. They were Greek.
Sure.
Their ethnicity is Arab. Okay. So they wandered in from the desert long ago. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, and I do not wish to insult anyone on this. So we could say, well, we wish you to have a country. Okay.
Yeah.
But this requires a lot of strategy and structuring, and it's going to take time.
It's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, it's going to take time for it to function well. And it needs to be explained what a country is, a nation.
Right.
And the structure and forming a government.
So it lacks a structure, doesn't it, really?
Yeah,
that's
because,
what it is.
I mean, Hamas, call it by whatever you want. I did have sympathy for PLO one time, but a lot can change in 30 years. Because they made it policy that everyone had to have 4 wives and 20 kids, so about 30 years ago, so they can invade Israel.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Now, feudalism relies upon, you have patriarchal feudalism, and this is what's happened with the tribalism in our country. So feudalism is an exchange for power upon a scripture.
Of course.
So in the Western world and civilization, it was the Bible.
Right.
So you had Moses they have Moses in their scripture, but no Ten Commandments.
Listen, Kit, I've got to step in.
I could go on for ages.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Listen, you've been brilliant, and you've provided so much food for thought. I can't even begin to tell you. Thank you very much. That's Kit in Kent, with all sorts of elements to the story of where we and how we get to the Palestine bit, and all the journey before that. Journey. The word journey, by the way. No, I won't. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
foot on British soil is an absolute disgrace. And what's worse is that every single illegal migrant that enters and commits a rape or a crime, that's a rape or a crime that should have been avoided.
Correct.
I cannot think of a more appalling lack of public service than a situation like this. The evidence must be out there. The evidence to justify putting these people on trial for misconduct in public office must be there. But the IOPC weren't looking for it. They bottled it. It's an establishment cover-up, whitewash, and that is why we live now in a low-trust society.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
John in Paul says, just for the woke record, I am no longer a fisherman. I am a person who fishes. What is the world coming to, Ian? That's a good point. Wasn't it... Oh, what's his name? Who's the singer? The knicker-wearing oddball who sang the Bond... Sam Smith, him. Do you remember he was on the One Show, wasn't he? Them was on the One Show. And he called himself a fisher person, didn't he? And it sounded like the most ridiculous thing. I'm a fisher person. I like being a fisher person. Sam, will you stop saying fisher person? You're sounding like a weirdo. You're weirding me out, man. Fisher person. Couldn't stop himself. He was a fisherman. Ian is down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
I promise you, Ian, I'm going to do the modified, very short version of Kit version.
You have no idea how many conversations that sparked in this studio, Ian.
Oh, I'll tell you, I can imagine. It went around in my head, and it still is.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to work it out. Maybe we were all left to ponder it for the rest of the evening and work out some cryptic message there.
Oh.
Go on, fire away.
Anyway,
Sorry, Ian.
Very, very like two things. One, please, Nigel, please, Kemi, get together, sort out something, because we cannot have this Labour government in for 10 years. Because if you don't sort something out, they'll be in for 10 years. That's that bit out the way. Very
Fair
quick.
Point. Yep.
Right? Okay, more to the point. Week before last, we had Mandelson get kicked out for going with a paedophile, correct?
Yeah, for having a relationship with him.
Yeah. Right? This week, we've got the ex-Duchess of York being done because she also had a relationship with a sex offender.
It happens to be the same bloke.
Yeah, OK. You had, like, in Keir Starmer's thing about with Jimmy Savile, you have all these other people that have done rape, they've done this. All of a sudden, this government, this so-called government, actually stopped an inquiry about the grooming gangs. That's all got, like, pushed under the carpet. And also, with the rapists and everything, God knows what else they've got up to with Hamas, and they're doing deals with them. Yeah. Please, somebody, take me to see a psychiatrist, because I want to know, truthfully, how they can actually come out with it. And Lammy, Mr. Mastermind, says yesterday, oh, well, we're not actually doing anything as of yet, right? Yeah. Nothing. Well, then, if you're not doing anything as of yet, don't even sort of start it in the first place.
And you don't, and there's no need to start it. Ian, you've been brilliant and you've been to the point. Thank you very much indeed. Alan in Peterborough says, I think what Kit was trying to say was that Starmer doesn't have a clue. I think broadly that's exactly what it was. Kit from Kent.
Tim and I went down to Kent. That's as far as I'm going.
Who's Tim?
So there was this wonderful Jethro sketch once where he said he was in the class and the teacher said, can you think of a rhyme that ends in Timbuktu? And the clever girl at the front, Jasmine, said, I was walking on the sand when I saw a ship not far from land. It had a very handsome crew. Its destination, Timbuktu. And then his mate stood up and said, I've got one. And it starts, Tim and I went down to Kent. Shall I give you the second line? And we met 3 women in a tent. That's all I can tell you.
I know the answer.
I know you do. He's laughing. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Palestine.
No, a bit of man flu, but yeah, I'm all right.
Oh, you're not got man
Come
flu.
on, you sympathise.
Go home to my house. My wife will rub your chest.
Thank you.
What's your view on the Palestine thing? That's extraordinary, isn't it? Virtue
Yeah,
signalling.
the timing of it is extraordinary. The
have you
reasons,
just seen what?
nobody can
Have you just
fathom.
seen that Number 10 has released on Twitter? Happy Rosh Hashanah or whatever it's called. You know what I'm saying.
Rosh Hashanah.
That's well
Yes.
done. It's just you think to yourself, who are you trying to placate, Starmer? Everybody. You're trying to placate everybody.
doesn't
Even
make
his
it-
own
yeah.
deputy said it was virtue signalling.
Correct.
Unbelievable. And, of course, the Reform News. We've got Zia Yusuf, head of Doge, and, of course, Chief Policy, on at 4 o'clock. Because I think there's a few questions that need asking about that. Of course, the left had all lined up and said, this is outrageous. Anybody with a different skin colour or is going to be thrown out. It's going to be like America.
Yeah, anybody.
The truth of the matter is, you're not going to come to this country and get benefits and not work and take advantage and bring dependence. I think you'll find that millions of people will go, that makes perfect sense
It's just
financially.
that no political party, the Tories or Labour, have ever gone, let's do this. They've never done it because it's not in there. They think, oh, let's just carry on. It's not worth
But
the
carrying
hassle.
on's not working, is
Boris Johnson is the man mostly responsible for much of what they want to try.
And you know, I've always admitted, I sat here and defended him till the cows came home, and then when he started to do more and more and get into it, he let us down. He should have ruled for 10 or 15 years if he hadn't been such an idiot.